Det här är en fågel!
Vi förstår innan icke.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Longhouse, a show about art, politics, culture, philosophy, etc., etc., all with a true right Nordic perspective. Now, you might notice right away, if I've done my job correctly, that this is a pre-recorded video or live stream. I'm going to be away and unable to do the stream this Thursday, so we're doing a bit of work on the side here to make sure it arrives just in time. Welcome back, of course, Luddic Path.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Pre-recorded live for the first time. It's going to be exciting. I think I'm going to be in the comment section if this gets run as a premiere, probably. So
I think I'll be able to. I think I'll be able to run this as an actual live stream, but we'll see. And if not, it'll be a premiere, and I'll probably be hanging out a bit in the chat, but I can't be there for the entire thing.
No, it'll be something new to try, but I mean, we can be there in the chat and interact and talk with people that way, so it'll be interesting.
And since this is a bit of a different episode anyway, we've decided to do it in a bit of a different style. We usually present a very clear sort of PowerPoint presentation style where we have things we want to show off or talk about, but here we use it more as, I think we talked before we started, that we wanted to use it more as sort of discussion points and just have a bit of a more of a free-form conversation between
us. So there's less power but more points.
Exactly.
a bit different than you're used to, but I think you'll enjoy it nevertheless. I think it's an interesting topic we're going to cover.
Yes, we're going to be talking about, you called it the incel question, and it's something I think we talked about a bit before in terms of people asking us questions related to incels and how they relate to the dissident right. And I've been thinking about it for the past week, and you think about sort of the groups that exist in the dissident right online. You think about, usually there's the Christians and the pagans, etc., etc. But the incels seems to be, if they exist, it's a very small group, I think.
Yeah, I don't know how many of them exist in the dissident right, and if they do exist in the dissident right, I assume they're not like very open or trying to parade about their inceldom. I mean, I think that applies to a lot of people. There's certain things that are more kosher, I guess, to share within the parameters of the community, and other things that are not so cool.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But the incel sphere, nevertheless, it's a quite large sphere on the internet, growing as well. And it's something that I paid attention to for a long time. Doing research for this episode, I looked at some of these other incel accounts, and like these incel YouTubers, of course, the ones that haven't been purged, because I saw there was quite a few of those, probably now living on BitChute or Odyssey. But a few of the kind of classic ones that have been going for almost 10 plus years creating incel content, it's quite a kind of sort of touchstone to go back and look at some of this stuff and see what they were discussing then and what they were discussing now. And of course, maybe I should be surprised or not be surprised, but there seems to have been, not a whole lot of progress in the incel community. They seem to be harping on a lot of the same points.
That's very interesting. I haven't really been paying attention to them because I suppose there was some overlap with incel spheres, as you said, like 10 years ago, in the height of the culture war in the mid 2010s. but I never sort of fell into any of those communities. So I never, like, I crossed paths with a couple of creators, I suppose, and then, you know, never looked them up ever again. So
Yeah,
I'm surprised to hear that they haven't really moved since 2012.
I don't know where they can move to. Honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, I would of course have expected them to all become like super hard reactionaries, which because that was my political path, and I kind of project that onto other people, and I assume that that's where they're going to be after. I mean, with everything that's happened, they would have probably locate themselves somewhere in the far right, but I found that that's not necessarily true with a lot of them. They seem to still be in this kind of like based centrist, right of center space still,
Yes.
which is quite I mean it's quite surprising, but like the world from their perspective looks very different. They have a completely different political concern, even though they
Hmm.
overlap very much, and we'll get into this as well with some diagrams and some charts as to like where they belong. But I think they've been with, you know, they've been associated or been kind of like, you know, online right adjacent as long as the alt-right has existed, and probably even before the alt-right existed in 2016. I mean, I
Hmm.
could find videos, you know, maybe back in 2014 and, you know, 2012, when this phenomenon started to, when it started to become a recognized phenomenon.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have the presentation, and we have some current event stuff as well that I wanted to just cover quickly before we
Yeah,
get
that's
more to the
actually
Incel part.
great that we decided to do that. This is going to build on older stuff in terms of our catalog on the Longhouse here. So if you're interested in the politics of this, I'd recommend you going back to the very first episode we did, where we do a political overview of Norway. And one of the parties we covered in that stream is the Democrats, which is Overton window style, the furthest right usually you can get in Norway. And they've been having a bit of a rough time lately internally. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, I mean, I read the Reset online newspaper, and of course they're running stories about this. I don't see stories about this in any of the mainstream newspapers. I mean,
I
the
do in
Democrats.
some local newspapers because I'm from an area where the Democrats are very strong politically. Not
Interesting.
that that's saying much, considering they're a very small party, but yes, I've been getting it through a lot of local papers as well.
Yes, but they have been able to dominate a few of these sort of communes and what they call like the sort of hinterlands. Some
Yeah.
of these types of areas in Norway where they're actually sort of preferred candidates, and they've been able to build relationships to people and actually be, you know, well, it is something. I mean, they're not, you know, inside of the kind of minimum threshold you need to be in the parliament, but they have some ability to move things politically, which is
Uh-huh.
interesting. Of course, I mean, on the Reset, there's just new articles popping up constantly, and like I wish I could just read one article to you, but there seems to be new articles coming up where the next article contradicts the former article, and then that article contradicts the other article. So the best summary I can give is that there's been a kind of fraction war inside of this party.
Yes,
Where
that's my take from it as well. It's because I had the same experience where things are very contradictory from one interview to the next, from one day to the next, and at times it seems like they don't even know what's going on internally. So
the interviews are contradictory. I was at their website, and there was just no content up at one point. You know, I mean, we have some links that we can check out later to the reg there. It's the Brønnøysundregisteret, which is really kind of an open data source of all
yeah,
of the
it's the official.
organizations that are registered in Norway. Like if you want to do business and you want to be registered for VAT, then you need to be in that registry, and it's sort of a completely public API that anybody can go look up who's registered and like who sits on the board and who's the kind of daily leader and so on. But I mean, leading up to this stuff, if you go on Odyssey, you have the Odyssey channel of Hans-Jørgen Lysglimt Johansen, which is the man on the bottom of the photo there, and we've talked about him in previous episodes, and he actually like in 2001 had an episode about like the Democrat Party where he talked about exactly the stuff that's going on now.
Yep.
Which I mean, it's from him, it's coming from this angle that he has his own party that's called the Alliance, that is like this completely avant-garde. I mean, it's just kind of so far out there in terms of Norwegian policy that it's almost kind of like an art project. But
Yeah.
you just try to make the case that you think the Democrats are like a serious political party that you can put stock into if you've been kind of disenchanted with the mainstream Progress Party, and well, you shouldn't, because they're undergoing this kind of internal struggle and they can't pull together a real party. And he talked about this kind of chaos that was going on there, and that there was sort of a fractional war. And the fractions could be summed up in this way: is that you have the man on the left there, the Iranian Makwan Kashikal, who has been kind of the head of the board for a while in the Democrat Party, I think for over 4 years. Yeah, I mean, he is originally Iranian. He resides in like the Norwegian South, which is where like most of that sort of like it's him and like this sort of southern Norwegian fraction of the sort of Democrat Party that is now sort of contending with a new Oslo-based fraction of the Democrat Party that is led by Geir Ugland Jacobsen. That is on the right here. Geir Ugland Jacobsen was actually in like the Oslo Progress Party until that whole party was basically disbanded over some disputes with certain interviews that were made, and they were. I mean, there was some internal struggles and some. I mean, problems with optics, basically, some sort of optics cucking issue in terms of what direction they wanted the party to go in, whether it was going to be a kind of nationalist, national conservative party, or if they wanted to just be a kind of like liberal conservative. That's what you call it in Europe. It just means kind of, American conservative, libertarian type direction. And the Sylvi Listhaug, who I don't know, is she the head of the Progress Party currently? I don't think she was at the time.
Recently became the head of the Progress Party, yes, but she's the former.
She had the spokeswoman position, I believe.
Yes, and she occupied for a while the position of foreign ministry in the previous government.
That seems accurate. And she basically went out in the media and said that, like national conservatism, sounds suspiciously like national socialism. Oh, that's no good. We don't want that in, we don't want that in the party. And so there was sort of a big back and forth there. And the entire Oslo division of that party was disbanded with Geir basically at the helm of it. And now you have a lot of this kind of abandoned fraction of more like these hardcore national conservative types coming into the Democrat Party, trying to basically coup the party, which is, of course, interesting because I was under the impression that the Democrat Party was like a right-wing kind of nationalist party. Well, apparently that's kind of under dispute because you have different people in this party like that are, a lot of them are like these kind of Progress Party rejects, or people who felt like, the Progress Party was just getting too fucked and too neoliberal. So
too mainstream,
but like the wing there of this Makwan guy was basically, he went into Reset, and I quote him as saying that, we wanted this party to be an anti-globalist kind of people's party or something. We didn't want it to be like a right-wing nationalist party. And I'm kind of scratching my head. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean, Makwan?
What's the difference between an anti-globalist and a nationalist?
What are you trying to replace the globalism with exactly? It's just, you just got to be contrarian and say like globalism is bad. It's like an anti-war leftist or something. Like,
I think it just means that he's been outplayed into like either doubling down and saying that, actually I'm a third positionist and throwing out the Roman salute and or doing this kind of weird mental gymnastics from trying to like distance himself from everything, right?
You have to play the victim, right? That's the media game. You always have to find the victim angle, and sometimes it just.
I'm not a national conservative. I'm not a nationalist. I'm an anti-globalist.
I'm an anti-globalist. I'm just anti stuff, but I don't actually stand for anything. But I do know that there are a lot of people in this party that are like these kind of document.no people. For those of you, I mean, if you're curious about document, you could go look at the Norwegian media stream, although we don't cover it too much in depth. But you have a lot of these kind of Norwegian, like hardcore conservative, like this kind of like Reaganite conservative people, counter jihad people who run this kind of document website, and the people who are involved with it who have this kind of typical macho liberalism stance who were in that party, and that's kind of what they wanted to go with. They wanted to, oh yeah, we're gonna secularize the Islamists, and we're gonna have like, this kind of macho liberal type of worldview where everybody has free speech, and that was kind of their view, like this '80s free speech kind of. I wouldn't say Charlie Kirk. It's pretty close to this kind of original Turning Point USA stack of policies.
Yeah, that's fair.
Where,
it's
super,
the Republican liberals, basically.
Like pro-Israel, freedom of speech, the West is the best, that kind of attitude. And like those people, like they genuinely believe that. But I mean, you look at the, I don't remember his name currently, some guy who he writes at Reset a lot. If you look at the B-Reg link there, I can see if I can find up some of these names, because there are a few people that are both in the.
You want the B-Reg?
Yeah, the B-Reg one, yes.
Okay. I'll just share my screen here. I have it ready.
I mean, of course, some of the interviews that I looked at with these people were like from 2017, and they could, of course, have changed their minds. I mean, a lot of my views changed radically after like Trump lost.
Well, that's fair.
So they might have, completely, it's almost 5 years ago, so they might have completely changed. But for what I can see, I mean, these people are just like pure containment. They're basically bragging about the fact that they're keeping like the far right elements. Let's see if we can zoom a little bit, so I can't see the names that well.
Yes, I'm just trying to. Oh, content not available in English. All right.
Interesting. So this is what's been kind of up for dispute in terms of like who actually has these leadership positions. See if I know anybody there.
This is the board here with its members.
So I mean, you have Geir Ugland is on there, but you have like the Mark 1 is in there as well. Vidar Sveinung, he was the guy who founded the party, and then you have some of these
this guy. Yep.
People. I can't find the name of the guy immediately. It doesn't strike me who basically, I mean, he writes for Document, but he had this kind of like large interview, and he is one of the people who are leaving now, apparently, according to the Reset article, along with some other people who feel like their dream of the kind of free speech,
who's leaving?
Marketplace of ideas stuff. That's going into the shitter in favor of these alleged like Putin worshippers, like anti-vax people, right? They're just getting outflanked from the right. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an interview. If you go back to the slide there's an interview with Geir Ugland Jacobsen.
Is that the retreats link?
Now you just go back to the slides.
Oh, sorry.
And there's an interview with Geir Ugland Jacobsen where he is at the sort of Wolfgang V podcast. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yes, but I haven't listened to that particular one.
No, but I mean, he actually makes a really good profile, and this was after the Oslo FRP was disbanded, and he talks about his background and his ideas about politics, and he comes across as actually like a sort of serious actor. Like he's not just like looking for attention. He actually has a sort of conservative. He's willing to do some kind of like bipartisan cooperation to get like national conservative political victories, basically. That's like, and at this point, I mean, you might as well, because there's no reason to try to stick to a kind of identity as a kind of conservative in this country anymore, because there's like it has like there's no content there. It's just like pro LGBTQ neoliberalist.
Yeah, if you're actually going to go into politics, you might as well,
Yeah, I mean, you might as well cooperate with like the Labour Party and like the Centre, the Farmers Party and the Christian Democrat and that kind of stuff to get some of these like pro, these based policies through, because like the kind of Conservative Party is just a total joke at this point. So and I mean, he is a guy with some industry experience where he worked as some sort of like crisis management consultant. I think it's a nice background to have if you're trying to do a coup on, you're trying to do a kind of coup inside of a party. He talks about a lot of stuff like, if you go into an organization, it's important to find like what he calls like quote unquote the hidden leadership, because like you have these people in these type of high positions in companies that are, they are like the opinion leaders, basically the people who
Mm-hmm.
wield the soft power, and not the people who are actually on the board
Yeah,
or
yeah.
formally leaders. Like you need to find the people who hold the soft power and like try to make them
Mm-hmm.
change their minds. So he seems, to be kind of
He's tuned
Machiavellian
into
enough.
the
Like, yeah,
same worldview as a lot of dissidents. Yeah,
I mean, if he has like nationalist convictions and he's tuned into like political realism, then it's like, this seems like a total win. This is not
yeah,
something like, oh, I'm not going to vote for this party. Oh, it's over for them.
yeah, yeah.
Now it's run its course. Now I better go vote for the Christians or whatever. No, I actually
Well,
think
you'd
this is
think
good.
that the usual way this goes is that it would be the other way around, right? That this coup would have happened, in a leftward drift.
Yeah, that's quite
Um,
typical. But I
but
think that it's easier to now. I mean, the group that's really getting squeezed is going to be these kind of free speech liberal types.
yeah,
I think that's going to be the easiest group to squeeze out because they were squeezed out of by the left on the kind of mainstream platforms and with the
yes,
mainstream channels. So now they're going into like the underground, and then they're just going to be squeezed by the kind of hardcore right wing
yep,
fractions. So I mean, that's like the big losers of this decade. I think it's going to be like these free speech liberal types. They're going to keep the Kjetil Espen Goffings of the world that are just going
yeah.
to keep
God,
screaming into the void about their freedom of
I
speech.
keep
And
stumbling onto their articles, and it hurts a bit every time. How close they are, yet far away, to realizing how trapped they are in this
yeah,
system.
no, I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah.
They seem quite content the last 20 years to just stick to this. What if the situation was reversed?
Imagine if the situation was reversed. Wow. Yeah.
That's
What
my
if it
big
was a white
insight.
man who said
Yeah,
this? Yeah.
imagine that. If you said
Yeah.
this about white people, what would happen then? I mean, wow, this is really prejudiced.
Really makes me think.
Somebody should do something. But I'm still glad.
Somebody should
Yeah,
do something. Yeah.
I'm still glad we're keeping the loonies out. We're keeping the
Yeah.
far
Yeah.
right people out of here. So you should thank us, by the way. Like,
Yeah. God.
I mean, I don't. It's going to be interesting to at least circle back and follow up on this situation and see how it
Yep.
unfolds. But I mean, if it continues in this direction and they're able to get Guy as sort of like the head of this party, I'm probably going to vote for them. I mean, I know that like voting is kind of you're not going to move the needle a whole lot, but I mean, at least I'll see if I can
Well, I mean, if
pay
you're
attention
gonna
to it.
show up at the polls, you might as well,
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to stop the polls from like not voting either. So
Yeah.
he seemed like to actually have some experience and some serious vision about how he could, well, maybe just slow the pause a little bit, and just create an image outward that's like not completely.
And it's a bit of the things we've talked about earlier as well. The effect of being a country in the Nordics. You're enough on the periphery of the American empire, so to speak, that we can get away with a bit of shenanigans without having to walk in lockstep with every policy. And so our sort of political tactical options, I think, internally are a bit more varied than for someone in the US, I think. There's
Yeah,
still hope, is what I'm saying. But
I think it's
maybe I'm being too hopeful.
unexplored territory here. It's like how far in reality can you actually push some country like this? How much
Yeah,
can you get away with until you get noticed by the sort of larger
yeah,
bodies?
yeah.
And Norway is like starting to be blacklisted by, I think that's going to be the straw when like the EU is like blacklisting Norway or something. Yeah, I mean, if the NGOs start talking about Norway
Banning
the
us
way they
from
talk
the
about,
EEA. Yeah,
yeah, this is like the new Poland or whatever. This is like the new backwards
yeah,
people. When they start, they're able to exert so much pressure that I mean, I realize that Norway is kind of like a sort of small soft power country where I've been a little bit confused in terms of like the subject of foreign relations of how to categorize hard and soft power. Interestingly enough, I mean, we've talked about him previously, but I've gotten recommended on YouTube a series of lectures from Alexander Stubb, who's like the Fenno-Swede guy, basically,
Okay. Yeah.
the kind of transatlanticist, neoliberal Fenno-Swede Superman.
Hmm.
I mean, he was surprisingly articulate, even though I don't care for his kind of like neoliberal policies. But he did these sort of series of lectures on international politics and the war in Ukraine, and he's very articulate in his ability to communicate. Uh, how he thinks about foreign policy and how you can understand Russia, how you understand Ukraine and the U.S. and so on. But he explains it in the way that hard power is basically military and money, like sort of like economic coercion, military coercion. Soft power is kind of influence, basically. It's like if you're an influencer or a celebrity and you endorse some position, then you're
Yeah.
not coercing people to take that position, but it's like it's basically understood that the cool people,
Yeah, it's the look at
the
me,
cool
I'm doing
kids,
this,
have.
therefore everyone else should be doing it.
And he talked about the Scandinavian countries as basically like soft power countries because there are a lot of I mean I think it's not as common as the Norwegians like to think, but there are other countries around the world that look to the Scandinavian countries like the Scandinavian model of welfare and
Oh yeah,
tax
but we
models.
also have a tendency ourselves to play up every time there's like a
Yes,
poll, and it's like Norway or Finland is the happiest place to live on the planet, right?
yes,
That always gets played up and played
and that's the kind of soft
forward out
power.
into the world, right? Yeah.
So we are like at the top of all these kind of pause rankings, and whether it's happiness or like all of these sort of peace rankings or productivity, we score really high on these rankings, and that basically means that we have soft power. Like we could be a kind of
Hmm.
other countries are going to look to us to okay, we want to be like that.
Yeah,
So
and
we
like
have
every
to kind
time
of
there's like an NGO that wants to like do a thing, they're like, okay, what are the cool kids doing? And they look up the polls and they see that, the Nordics are scoring highly on the happiness index, whether or not that actually means anything, obviously. Um,
but that's a,
and that the data
yeah.
points are are real in any sense, but that's the world we live in, right?
But it's
So
really something
so
to think about because
yeah.
if you get people like you and me are able to get our way, like independently of what's going on in Sweden and Denmark and so on, and we
Hmm.
institute this kind of like constitutional monarchy, is kind of like grim, dark constitutional monarchy. All of that kind of soft power is gone. You're just
Yeah.
going to be shunned as this kind of like your rogue state and
Yeah, it's
that
gonna be,
really poses a problem. I mean, I didn't think about this before, but there's a connection between the virtue signaling and the power internationally. So, I mean, this really needs to be considered deeply in terms of how this can be approached and how you can put in some base policies without like ruining the image that is being
yes.
kind of sold to the rest of the world. That's a bit of a tangent, though. I don't have anything
It's an interesting
more on
thought,
this.
but
Uh,
I'm gonna have to let it simmer for a while before we tackle that stuff.
but yeah,
But
I mean,
just to sum it up, I mean, things are happening in this party, and it might be, if you live in Norway, you uh, might be interested in paying attention to them for the next couple of weeks,
yeah, I think
to
so
see if
too.
their policies change.
I'm not going to turn and vote for Hans and the Alliance, basically,
Right.
because of this stuff.
But I think
It
you're
does,
right. I think your take that, effectively this is an art project is is the way to look at it. It
yeah, that's
meshes well with his inconsistencies of character as well. So
that it's kind of an art project because I mean he seems to like he will talk about that there is no political solution and like we need to do paganism and like revitalize the Hare Krishna movement and do DMT and like all this sort of stuff that I mean, if you don't like, I'll just put it this way: if you don't want to do politics, then you don't do politics. You can just do something else. But at the end of the day, the alliance is a political party.
yeah,
So I mean, it doesn't matter how much you see the limitations of the political approach. Then don't become a political party. I mean,
right.
that's just my take on it. Just do something else. You could probably be an author or something and just go do stunts or
Yeah, and you talked
create
about soft
movies or
power. In that
something.
sense, you might have
Yeah.
actually more of an effect than actually trying to be a party.
But if you're going to do this sort of, you're going to make money off doing politics and talk to people and try to create alliances and just get, it's just claw these kind of small wins, then, I mean, you don't want to be a lunatic. You want to be somebody who can actually present yourself on TV and
Yeah.
show something that a normal person can look at and not wince. So that's just my idea. Politics can stay boring. If you want to do art projects, then you can do that as a metapolitical project. You don't have to make a party. Basically, I think it's I think too many people have fallen into that trap. I'm not going to name names, but anyway.
Yeah, I think that's enough rank punditry for one stream here. We'll just jump right into the incel stuff when we.
Yep.
Oh, I skipped the title here, but the first point you wanted to talk about was, yeah, I mean, if you've been online for probably as long as most of our viewers have, you've probably either bumped into or heard about incels before. If you haven't, the quick rundown is young males who are involuntary celibate, meaning that they can't get a girlfriend, can't have sex. I mean, in theory, I suppose they could get, like, they could purchase sex, but for some reason choose not to, of course. But it's not about, the act of sex. It's about not having relationships, really.
Yes.
And they form a larger and larger group of society.
Absolutely. I mean, even before 2008, I had an impression that there would be like a larger amount of people that were in this category. And I assume that throughout history, there's always going to be a certain chunk of these civilized societies that will fall into this group. And just to be mindful, when we're using the word incel, I mean, that's become like kind of a label that I assume that you have men out there that are not able to secure any type of mate or any has like no sexual prowess whatsoever, who don't really identify as incel. So sometimes there'll be a bit of a mixing up between the people who identify.
Yeah, there's a difference between the definition, sort of the factual things that make up, the definition of an incel and the identity of incel. Because a lot of the incels that we're going to be talking about are the people who self-identify and are part of a community, quote unquote, of incels.
Yes, it's like a Marxist class consciousness, basically. Like they sort of gain consciousness of their status as a political bloc, even though that political bloc tend to be quite impotent in more ways than one. But as you can see here, like from like the 1989, the end of history, up until 2008, there's I say you have like a 7 to 8 between like maybe that or 12% of the male populations that are virgins, basically. And of course, you there's like these monks who are voluntarily celibate, but it's such a small percentage of the population. I know that they exist, and I get that out of the way now, so that I don't have to go back and make that disclaimer every time.
Yeah, if there's like an actually guy in the comments, but come on.
Of course there is. There's always the actually, but I think like in Western modern countries, the amount of men that voluntarily go to be like chaste, like Catholic priest or something, it's not a large segment of this graph. I mean, we are talking about sorry to say, like, I'm just using this word, you're talking about losers. And it is kind of an appropriate term, not to try to offend people, but I was listening to
they are social losers in the sense that, they're not useless people, but they're not coming out on top. And they're for various reasons choosing to stay down, basically.
Yeah, are not able to get out of the...
Or not able to get up, yeah.
Even over a longer time period. So, I mean, I watched one of the other more recent Wolfgang V podcasts where he had Haralaya on as a guest, and they talked about the term loser, that it's really an exclusive male term. It's not very common that you refer to a woman as a loser.
No.
It's so it is kind of implied there that you're talking about that there are men that are in competition, and there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser, basically. And we play a lot of rounds of this game, but there are people who are just kind of perpetually coming out at the bottom for various reasons, of course. But it seems like the amount of them has increased just looking at these graphs here. I mean, they're like from the Washington, Post. This is kind of like a very mainstream news article, and of course it relates to the United States, but I have no reason to believe that Norway is an exception to this, or that really any of these kind of transatlantic neoliberal countries are an exception that you have. Do you think that? Do you
Yes,
think there's
and
any?
I'm sure if you follow people like Vox Day, etc., you have like the difference alpha, beta, etc., and these people are pretty far down on the hierarchy here. I don't quite remember all the definitions, but
You have the alpha, the beta, the delta,
yeah,
gamma, and the
I think the
omega.
gamma, yeah.
So,
Yeah, so we're
so
talking about gamma and omega types here, really.
yes. I mean the omega, so like that's what I could, what they call like the true cells. We could get into the glossary
Yeah.
of the
Oh yeah, we're
Incel
gonna have some
community, but
fun with the Incel wiki later.
with the people who are, like, I mean, you have two different groupings. I'll get back to this later as well. The way I see it in this Incel community is that you have the mostly white demographic of people who are kind of idiosyncratic, who have like a specific. They talked about the Myers-Briggs test I saw on the Telegram,
Yep,
the
yep,
academic agents test. Like you have like one of these kind of introverted thinking
yep.
personalities, basically, and you're kind of a little bit off socially, and that just kind of, there's some stuff there that kind of prevents you from being able to interact effectively with women who would
It's
be
interesting
suitable
because
partners.
I've been catching up on some Ed Dutton stuff lately, and he's been harping on, I think it wasn't on Lambster or something like that, about how the male trait of sort of like autism or that sort of producing males who think and operate a bit differently, who might seem a bit weird, is required for the sake of invention, to create different thought patterns, so to speak, and so you can't eliminate it 100%, or you shouldn't try to eliminate it 100%. But I think, looking at these graphs here, I mean, something's up, right? And I'm sure the seed oil guys are going to point at the seed oils, and some guy is going to point at the rise of feminism, and another guy is going to point at lower testosterone levels. And I'm sure there's a million reasons why this is happening, but
Of
it
course,
is happening, and it's a
for
large
me,
block of our society.
the easiest one, I think, is like the emergence of high definition internet pornography that I think comes in at 2008.
That certainly helps,
but
yes.
there's a lot of factors here. It's
That's that joke.
what is,
That's when we realized we could watch porn on our phones. The line just starts going up.
yeah, but I mean, like you said, I also think it's like many factors doing it. I don't know if you've seen that movie Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah.
Where like you have, that's one of the first Keanu Reeves movies. It's kind of the precursor to why he was selected for The Matrix. And they have Henry Rollins. That's like this kind of, I mean, he's been made fun of a lot, but he plays these really intense characters, where he's like this kind of surgeon, doctor, roboticist guy, and he tries to fix people who get this kind of like cyber sickness or whatever, and they try to sort of isolate. Well, is it the cyber travel that's causing it? Is it, well, what's causing it? This is causing it. This is causing it. Fucking society is causing it. Every fucking thing is causing it. So that's kind of like my approach to it. I just point to 20 different things that are. It seems like everything in society would be pointing in the direction of having more virgins, basically. I mean, except from like the sex focus, but other than that, there's the emphasis on sex is there, but like the stuff that would make the mechanism of like the testosterone and like the health and the lust and the energy and all that stuff is just drained. So there's focus.
I don't want to side rail here, but reminding me of that movie, there's a similar character. Maybe I'm stretching a bit here, but Dennis Leary's character in Demolition Man almost has the same type of character. Like this.
I don't remember his character.
No, he's that. It's this. It's called like this revolutionary leader or whatever, and he has sort of the same. He inhabits a lot of the same. Maybe that's like a character of the time, like this guy who's pointing a finger at society and sort of like telling us all what we really know, that all of this is, compounding to create untold horrors beyond our comprehension, but we don't really care, do we? Because look at the blinking lights, right?
Information overload, man. We got to blow it up.
Kind of like
blow
that.
up the system. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
that's the character. I think that was a common sentiment at the
It's the
time, and it was
precursor to Uncle Ted, I suppose.
yes. I sympathize with it largely, as you can tell by my handle. So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, but yeah, you can see the other. It's not just male virginity on the rise, but there's also a decline in the amount of sex that's been had, by men. And I don't know how this works out. I mean,
Is this U.S. centric
yeah, this
data
is
or is
United
this?
States centric
Yeah.
data. I mean, you have Norwegian data as well. I just wasn't able to find anything that was this detailed.
No, no. I'm
But
just for clarity.
yeah, but I've seen reports that share similar concerns. I
Yeah.
mean, of course, if you start looking up this stuff in Google, you get like the sanitized mainstream. This is
Oh
what they
yeah, of
want you
course.
to think, and like the mainstream narrative is basically that this is, it's a natural effect of a growing complex economy where housing costs have gone up and people are getting educated, so they're staying with their parents longer. It's just a natural effect of that. It's not some feminist pornography conspiracy. It's just this really condescending stuff where
It's a
yeah,
conspiracy, but it's good that it's happening,
it's
Luddic.
good that it's happening if you think it's good. And it's
Oh, it's
typical
that. It's the
celebration parallax.
celebration parallax. Yes, thank you.
But
Um,
I mean, these are just really short. But just to outline the problem, when you see, I mean, this is like a tripling, of male virgins, basically. Not just the fact that
yeah, I
they,
mean this isn't natural, right? Something's causing this. I think we can all
yeah. I mean,
agree on that.
there's other problems as well, like you have like lowering testosterone, lowering sperm counts.
Sure.
I
But
mean,
again,
it's
as I said, there's going to be like 10 different, guys pointing out 10 different reasons why this is happening. And I think they're all right. It's just that in 2008, it seems like we hit some sort of like culmination point where all of this could just kick into overdrive.
yep,
Um,
exponential growth. We got
yeah. And
you
what's
can't.
interesting is the one on the right here. I know it's not the same as the one on the left, but the one on the left is for men very similar, right? So the women have stayed pretty much the same. There's been a slight increase, it seems, but women have stayed mostly the same, while men have accelerated quite a lot,
Yeah, no, I
uh,
mean, it's
or
a little bit worse
decelerated,
for
I
women as
suppose, in
it's a
their
little bit
sexual
worse
activity.
for a
Yeah,
bit worse for women as well. And I think like these two have to be connected at some point. Like if there are no guys to have sex with, then it'll affect women as well. But I mean, we go back to this kind of like Chad gets all the girls type
yeah,
idea there. It's funny that you see in 2008 there's like it seems like a peak year for female sexuality for some reason, and then
yeah.
it's starting to dip after
I
that.
wonder
It's
what
the same
happened.
year where
Yeah,
that's the year where like male virginity starts to rise after
yeah.
like the sort of peak sexual
hmm
liberation for women
hmm
in 2008.
I
Uh,
think you can make an argument here that when society goes away, sort of it removes it, like the institution of marriage exists to distribute sort of the women in a more fair and equal way across the spectrums of the hierarchies, the omegas and alphas and the etc etc. Um, but removing that obviously returns things to more like a state of nature where the alphas, well, it's the alpha fucks and the beta bucks, right?
the alpha fucks
And
and the beta bucks.
yeah,
But
and
I've been thinking about this as well when we talk about nature versus what's that academic agent stream, conservatism versus
oh yeah,
nature.
those have been very good. I'm not done
Yeah,
with all of them, but they've been very good.
fantastic. I liked all of them. I'm not
Yeah,
finished it just as you, but it's interesting because I mean we can talk about how things are going in a kind of wrong direction here, but this kind of pattern, it is very much a kind of winner takes all pattern. Even like the stuff they're talking about with the increase in homosexuality, that you have all these men
uh-huh.
who are like at the bottom of the hierarchy, that they turn gay basically just to kind of submit to the kind of high value men. This also seems to be like a very kind of like raw natural competition thing to
Yeah,
be happening. So I mean,
Getting some
you
mouse
can
utopia
never,
vibes here. Yeah.
yeah, the mouse experiments thing. You can't seem to escape that stuff, but we're getting into more of like an uglier version of that
Yes.
in
But my
civilization.
point was more that, you know, this isn't necessarily an unnatural response. It's more of a return to the base needs without any social limits on this. And so having a large portion of the population not having sex or remaining virgins, I suppose in nature is a lot higher than it has been in the West.
Yeah,
And well, you know, that's going to cause instabilities.
it certainly
Probably.
is. It's not just about like the long-term implications that these people don't really have a stake in society. It's like a very large amount of people who don't have a stake
Yeah.
in society, and like they create a lot of problems. I think back to 300 a lot, and I know it's like a fictional movie based on a real thing, but you have this character that's like this
No, it's
freak.
2022,
Yeah,
Luddic. We're intuition posting now.
yeah,
Feelings don't care about facts.
yeah.
So
It's all
300 is
postmodern.
more
Right?
canon than any other historical movie.
It's real, basically. 300 is
Yeah.
real. Zack Snyder, everything he made is a
Yep.
documentary, and because that's how I feel. That's how I feel. It was real in my
I'm
mind.
joking, like I'm
Yeah.
slightly joking, but I'm also not. Like, this is where we're at, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think people can recognize that. I think people feel like it's real. You know,
Hmm.
they just
And
a
if
quick
that
aside
moves
here.
men, then who am I to, you know, say, actually, it isn't real? Because if it creates a new reality, then who cares, right?
Just a sort of a quick aside here, because I remember I had this conversation with this acquaintance of mine about when I was talking about this kind of hyper reality and people who are kind of unable to, separate reality from fiction, basically.
Hmm.
And like this person didn't believe me. Of course, he was like really skeptical about this stuff. But I mean, you can't, people can tell the difference between, games and reality, and like and movies and reality. They don't get, they don't go around killing people. It's not like, I can tell the difference between like the fakeness of GTA and the reality of Schindler's List.
Ooh,
I had to
that's a
like just hold
comparison.
I had to just hold back my laughter there. Like this is like Schindler's List is like a sort of fictional movie that's written by an
Yeah.
Australian who was never been in Germany, who just wrote it based on some accounts of some people who have probably been completely honest about what happened there. But like
Well, yes, but
that's what the normie thinks, that the drama movie that's like reality, and the like the Uwe Boll postal movie that's
yeah,
fake, right? So we got it in order, but
yeah, yeah,
I thought it was just a funny thing to bring in here. But yeah, 300 is totally real. All of that stuff happened, so I'm going to use it as a credible source.
yep,
So Zack Snyder's 300, they have they show really early in the show that they use eugenics, but there's like this one character they tried to who's had a kid who's been kind of hidden away from this eugenics program. That's like his hunchback. Kind of freak character,
hmm,
who really has been training like with the spear and the shield, and he
yeah.
wants to just
The guy who betrays them to the
he wants to die for the country, right? I
yeah,
mean, at least he was quite noble, but he ends up betraying them. That's the reason
yeah,
they lose, is because they have this one like basically incel character who betrays them
uh-huh,
because he can't get anything out of society. And imagine like having 27% of your society like be that guy.
being that guy.
Like that's kind of where we're going with this
Well,
stuff.
that's
Like
fair. Yeah,
they
that's a
have
fair
no
comparison.
they have like no loyalty, or I understand that. I don't even blame them. I'm not going to sit and like browbeat people who like if you've been if your
No, the
country can't
position is understandable.
yeah.
I think it's weak and effeminate, but it's understandable.
I mean, if you feel like your country should be able to provide you with a wife or something, or it should be able to create an environment where it's easy to find a partner,
Yeah,
and it's not doing that, and you feel like your life is just basically like lonely, forever alone, black pill
yeah,
shit,
yeah.
then I mean, you're going to just sign up to betray the country for a little bit of luxury or pleasure or money. Basically, you're not going to have any stake in the long term survival. So
Hmm.
it's becomes really unstable when you have such a large amount of
We can
men.
talk a bit about it later, but I was briefly before we started this recording introduced to the concept of the incel army, but we maybe be able to talk about that towards the end.
Yeah, we can bring it back.
Let's go. I think we've covered a lot of this, but I mean, it's happening, and it's a conspiracy theory, and here's why it's a good thing.
It's a good thing, actually. Let's look here. Just a sort of quick explanation on this one. I mean, we've already explained a bit about it, but just
I outlined some of the quote unquote facts on what an incel is, but I think we should define it a bit more as a community or as an identity.
I mean, before the alt right was sort of co-opted by Richard Spencer, I mean, the alt right was just basically like a sort of coalition of everything that didn't fit into the Republican Party. And like the manosphere and these sort of men's rights movements were growing, and it was a part of that movement. Where you have the box there, like the circle, the gray circle is the manosphere, and you have everything inside of it. With from the MRA, that's the men's rights activists, the PUA, the pickup artists, MGTOWs, the men going their own way, and the incels. And I mean, you can see in the diagram there which groups overlap with which, where the PUAs and the incels, I don't really think they overlap that much. I mean, if you're sort of like a self-identified incel, you're probably not a pickup artist, right? I mean, maybe you've tried and failed at a course or something, but you're probably going to be involved with, men's rights activism and this kind of MGTOW movement that's just like men going their own way. I mean, how do you want to summarize men going their own way? It's just like Generation X forever, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's. I mean, for some of these men, it might be legitimate in terms of like, these guys have been married, and sort of been betrayed by women to the point where they never want to engage ever again, in the relationship game. But for most young men, I think it's very strange to basically, place yourself in celibacy in a. You talked about chaste monks earlier. That's in theory what you're doing, but without the spirituality and thinking this is going to work out, right? Without the community of a chapel or a religion.
Was this kind of dynamic there that I remember even earlier, the beginning of the 2010s, where you had, like you said, the MGTOWs that are like these divorced men in their 40s and 50s who are just done with women, who are getting into the same communities and forums as these young men who can't get women, basically. And like these young men are basically being kind of groomed by these older men to be these kind of bitter, cucks, basically.
There's a Sam Hyde sketch where he's like playing like a dad who's like telling his kid about how like your mother is a whore and all women are gonna betray you, etc. And this kid is like 8 and trying to fish or something. And it feels like that, it's ruining your opportunities before you even had a chance to try them, I feel.
Yeah, it's like the bitter aunt that teaches her, niece to be a feminist or something. Because
I don't know, maybe it's my personality or whatever, but I feel like giving up before, not trying is to me worse than failing. And I think a lot of men obviously agree. But
at least allow other people to go out to disqualify you, right? Don't disqualify yourself.
Right.
Allow someone else to do it first. I know, of course, there's enough of that stuff in the incel community as well, like people who have been disqualified. And I mean, people have different thresholds as well for how much kind of rejection you can take before you just resign yourself.
And I think a lot of these communities do attract those with, a low tolerance for this. You talked about the personality stuff and and
I think so,
the introverted guys who probably will give up after trying one time, right?
I think so too. I actually think that sensitivity is probably like the main trait that these have in common, because they're like the spectrum of incels is actually quite large. Like from like really people who are actually relatively okay looking to people who are really ugly to people who are very smart to people who are very dumb. But they have to have something in common. Like there has to be some sensitivity thing there, where they're just not really able to take too much rejection, not comfortable being like social as much, so they end up retreating and just turning away from it. because I've seen like these weird, cases with these seemingly pretty ugly guys, or they're not tall and they're not specifically remarkable, but they seem to be able to hit it off on occasion and find a
Yeah, you
girlfriend and
see
have
it
like,
all the time. And so there's certainly hope, I guess. Um,
I mean, have you seen these sort of
but
Florida
these are
Florida
also a lot
man?
of guys. I talked about like the institution of marriage earlier. I mean, in a society where marriage is more strict or even more mandated by parents and arranged in certain cases, I mean, these men would probably turn out fine, you
Yes,
know?
I actually agree. There would have been, like I repeat myself, but like Christianity is doing the heavy lifting there,
Yeah.
and finding a kind of framework where these men could be in happy relationships that would be stable. And of course, it wouldn't be like this kind of they're like this sort of hyper dominant, king of the household men. You'd probably have a woman doing a lot of the day to day stuff for them, and they'd probably, yeah, they wouldn't be like dominant in that relationship, but they would be in like a kind of solid relationship that they could prosper in, instead of just living in like this kind of 10 by 10 apartment, crying on the internet to
Yeah.
some forum. But just as an aside there, I mean, have you seen these sort of Florida man YouTube videos of the guy who does these interviews with these kind of crazy people from Florida?
Is this the Andrew Callahan guy?
I think so. I mean, could we
Yeah.
just look that up just to make the
The
case about
all
like the
gas, no
ugly,
brakes guy.
all gas no brakes, these
Yeah.
kind of like ugly dudes who are seemingly able to get a lot, because like you have this kind of
That's the
like
real America
Joker
right there.
Joker guy who, I don't know if we want to show any of it, but like they go talk to this kind of Joker gang guy, a guy who's gotten like this kind of Joker tattoos, and he tries to look like the Jared Leto Joker
Do
on
you?
methamphetamines, basically. And he has this friend who's like this kind of shorter Mexican guy with face tattoos, and but that guy has like 8 kids. He has eight
He has
kids.
8 kids.
Yeah, this kind of like tattooed up guy, And so that's why I
Jesus
talk about,
Christ.
some of
But
these.
yeah, that's the thing. Like you, all the time, you see like, what you would definitely call social losers in the same way that the incel would be called a loser, having multiple children and getting women, right? Obviously not high quality women, but they're reproducing at an alarming rate.
Yes, not high quality all the time, at least. I mean, I put some
I'm not
faces.
able to show this video. I'm getting like a weird content thing.
Yeah, let's not do it. People can look it up for themselves. But I put
Yeah,
some
it's
characters.
Florida Man 2 is the name of the video.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, like, I put some characters up here. I mean, you have Ryan Gosling, that's kind of like the incel king, basically. I mean, he is in the Drive film. That's kind of
Yep.
like the, I guess that's kind of almost like this kind of iconic internet man incel
He's
movie.
literally me. Yeah.
He's literally me, and he wasn't like this other. He's Blade Runner 2049. He
Yep.
also plays the only incel character who has like this computer generated girlfriend.
Yep.
And the screenshot that I have in this one is actually from the movie that's called like Lars and the Real Girl, where he's
Mm-hmm.
like this kind of guy who thinks that he's going to marry like a sleeping doll, basically, and
Yeah.
the entire village has to like play along with it because they think it's going to help him break through his delusions. So I mean, and this kind of Lars and the Real Girl movie actually came out before Drive and the Drive and this the Blade Runner movie. So I wonder if like the director saw this one and think like he's going to be like the perfect kind of like incel,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like guy who was actually kind of good looking, but a little too idiosyncratic, a little too autistic. Just can't completely can't you can't
Yeah,
get
he
it to work.
manages to really sell the social awkwardness
Yeah,
of the man.
perfectly.
Yeah.
So
Um,
to his right, we have like the newer incel king that's kind of dethroned Ryan Gosling, that Joaquin Phoenix with the Joker. That is basically like now the quintessential, love letter to
yeah,
inceldom.
he's been hardened and turned into an agent of chaos by society now these days.
Where I mean, with his character, he is a bit more of idiosyncratic, almost to a point where I think it's difficult to kind of rehabilitate this
Yeah.
character, and a bit of that more of that kind of terrorism angle comes in here as well, where you start seeing the kind of like class struggle, and like all these people
Mm-hmm.
that are kind of the losers of society will basically
Yeah,
coalesce into
I
some.
think that's what's being tapped into by a lot of the mainstream incel commentary. I know we'll probably look at it later, but
Yep.
I mean, these are the guys who end up with firearms on the news, right?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean,
Eventually.
people were talking about how dangerous this film was, and I mean, I can see why. I mean, I don't like these journalists, but I like from the perspective of the people who are in the polite society, right? Who are like
Yeah.
well-adjusted, quote unquote, these kind of woke media journalist people. They see this stuff. They see the rise of this incel stuff, and I think they're kind of having trouble
Yeah,
sleeping.
and I mean,
And I
we
would
laugh
too,
and it's
honestly, if
funny,
I
but
was them.
it's a clear potential problem. Like it's a powder keg in that sense.
And it's growing as well.
Yeah.
So whether it's like the Jokerdom, they would have the Joker masks, and like we have people who have nothing to lose, basically. And it's like people who have been in maximum security prison their entire lives. They have like nothing to lose,
Yeah.
and they're extremely dangerous because of it. And you have like say, if a society is like 50% men and women, and 27% of the men are like virgins, basically. This is like it's like a 10% of society, like 1 out of 10 people who fit into some category of this kind of resentful.
Well, and the difference is, in maybe I'm being too nice on the past here, but my understanding of the way the economies worked before, I mean that man who might be an incel 100 years ago still would be able to find meaning in his life through other means, usually. Or he would end up dying an early death to alcohol or something like that. But
Going into the army and then just being cannon fodder
yeah,
or something. I think for some
or
of these
something like that.
people, but he would be able to get a job as well because it was
Well,
easy to
sure,
get
yeah,
low skilled jobs in the past.
yeah.
So that's another. That's just compounding the problem. It's like the lack of low
But
skilled jobs
for
and the
these
lack
men
of
in the modern
girlfriends.
day,
Yeah,
there's nothing.
absolutely nothing. So dangerous powder keg. I understand I'm an empathetic guy. I like to think that I understand the journalists' fear of this stuff, and I also understand where like the incels are coming from with this stuff. So to the right of him again, I put in Quasimodo. That's like in terms of like the fiction, because
Uh-huh.
like Disney didn't invent the Hunchback of Notre Dame story. It's actually a much older story.
Yep.
But I think he's like one of the I guess more of the heroic kind of incel characters in fiction. I mean, I really liked The Hunchback of Notre Dame as a kid. I still like it as an adult. I like stories about incels. Actually, it's something about it that's just kind of appealing as an entertainment product. Did you like this film
I
with
did,
the Hunchback?
but I don't remember liking it like any more than other random Disney films that I watched growing up. So I don't have like a special connection to it, but I did enjoy it.
I mean, the reason that I liked it
That's all I have to say.
a little bit better than the others, it's just a little bit darker than most of these Disney films. Like
Yeah, I'll give it
it's
that. Yeah.
medieval. It has like dramatic songs. It has fire and like murders and persecution, and a lot of these themes that they bring up that they're not trying to shy away from these kind of themes. Where this character lives in basically the kind of clock tower where he's put there by this. Like he's not the high priest. He's like a pastor in the story, but in the Disney version, he's like a judge basically. There's like
Yeah.
this kind of very cynical Machiavellian judge who tries to basically genocide gypsies.
Mm.
And like he's like the story's like he's like this malformed gypsy child that he's taken in there to kind of just stay up there and ring the bells. So he's not only malformed, but he's also deaf because like the bells
Yeah.
have just completely destroyed his hearing. So he has basically he's malformed. He has retard strength, and he's deaf. So, but I mean, a lot of the story is basically like him trying to like he wants that like that gypsy Stacy basically,
Yeah.
who's like one of the main characters, and he kind of thinks that he
Esmeralda is
might
her
have
name,
a
isn't it?
chance with Esmeralda, but you can sort of tell, and I like that the film doesn't cuck out on that. It's
Yeah.
like it would be so tempting to just end on this kind of
I
delusional
mean,
note.
I think that's why I think that's the hint that this is an older story.
Yes,
is that it doesn't cook out
because
on that.
it has like a straight to VHS sequel. That's the Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, where he actually finds a girlfriend, and she's
Oh,
like
really?
she's uglier than Esmeralda, of course. She's not like but I think she's like a 4. You know, it's like a 4 out of 10 in my estimation, which
Yeah.
is still a little bit unrealistic for this guy. But like, so I mean, according to canon, but we're just going to dismiss like the Disney properties because within the Disney, he's not even an incel. I mean, we talk about the guy, well, it's like the surprising breakout story. But I mean, this story I just really like because they don't cuck out on like the original Hunchback. They don't cuck out on the fact that he's just an incel, and he's probably going to be alone for most of his life. And
Hmm.
uh, but he's still able to do some heroic stuff within his own kind of
Yeah, and
frame.
I think that's part of the tale, you know, part of the point
Yes.
of it all. That just because you cannot reach the apex doesn't mean that there aren't, you know, quite a lot of mountaintops along the way that you can scale.
Yeah, you can still have a bit of an hero's journey in your life, even as a kind of freak. So that was quite appealing. So if we go down to the second row here, we have like John Merrick. I think John Merrick was John Merrick is the name of the actual guy this is based on. So it's John Hurt who is the actor that plays him. This is like from the David Lynch movie The Elephant Man
Yeah.
from 1980, and this is another like it is a bit of a similar movie. It's based on a true story where they have this guy who has like all these tumors in his head and around his body, and he's basically moved around at a circus freak show until this humanitarian doctor picks him up because he wants to study him basically as a kind of medical, as an example of extreme medical conditions, and try to write
Yep.
a lot more new research on him and so on. So they try to have like a story around his life, and I mean it's you know, for me this is like the kind of movies that I get a little bit emotional about. You know, it's not like it's the love story or this kind of patriotic thing, but you have the story about like this completely kind of isolated, dehumanized
Yeah, this guy will
male,
never
basically.
really fit into society in any way.
And it's just clear by the get go. But he can try to
Yeah.
squeeze out just a little bit of humanity, just a little bit of dignity, you know, that he can
Yeah.
have in his life. That they can try, and then usually they just end up passing away, as he does at the end of the story. Like he just
Hmm.
voluntarily, spoiler alert by the way, but he voluntarily commits suicide by just laying in the wrong position in the bed because like his breathing apparatus can't support him if he's not positioned correctly because of all these tumors and so on. So, but I mean, it's a film that I recommend if there's like Zoomers watching this. If you have the attention span to watch a 2 hour movie and you can stand a movie without colors. Unfortunately, that's. I've met a lot of Zoomers that have this problem is that they can't watch movies after, you know, made before like the 90s. And
Really.
if they don't have color, they seem to like, you know, it's not fast enough. It's not like
It's
it's just
weird though
beautiful.
because a lot of those movies are also usually shorter than modern movies. Like you walk into like the standard Marvel stuff, it's like, oh, 3 hours, right?
Uh,
And you're gonna watch the Bing Bing Wahoo for 3 hours, and you have to pay attention instead of, you know, having shorter, more insightful hits, I suppose,
yeah.
from these older movies. I mean, you still get it with a lot of more artistic movies, but that's strange that, you know, the Zoomers can't into. But I guess it's
I don't know.
anything
I
of
don't know if I'm
substance
talking.
is anathema
I'm
to a
not talking
modern
for
man.
all of. Not speaking for all of them, but I've seen, you know, the
No,
kind of
no,
TikTok generation. I think it would be tough for them to
yeah.
sit through
I
these
mean,
older
the
movies.
boomer moment, but like anything that's, you know, longer than 8 seconds, and the Zoomers lose focus.
Okay, so we keep moving to the right here. Then we have a much more recent film. I think
Yeah,
this was from
Megamind.
like
I've
2000.
never seen Megamind, but from my understanding online, it's another one of those "this guy ruined an entire generation" characters.
So
Is that
I mean,
correct?
there's a lot of ruined. What does that mean exactly? Like you ruined an entire generation?
Like, it's the joke. It's that song Scott Pilgrim ruined an entire generation of girls. Have you heard it? It's like a punk song.
No, I
Okay.
haven't actually. You have to. Damn,
I can't play it
feel
here because
stupid
I'm
now.
probably going to get hit with but I'll send it to you after.
Yeah.
But it's basically creating these cultural zeitgeist moments where it like defines. It's one of those "it's literally me" characters that a lot of young people emulate
Ah, okay.
or
Now I
see
see.
themselves as, to a point where it Not necessarily
Oh,
you
okay,
can
now I
notice
get
it,
it.
but
It's because they
yeah,
think that they're like Fiona, what's her name, like Ramona Flowers or something. All the women think they're like
something
this
like that. Yes,
pixie, blue hair, green
and
girl.
so without having seen the movie and only seen the residue effects of it, I feel like the Mega Man effect is that a lot of these what the int J guys feel like, oh, but if I just use my intelligence, she'll surely, if I tell her about how much of an atheist I am, she'll fall in love with my brain.
There's a list of 10 points why you should be my boyfriend.
Yes.
I mean, it's really that kind of guy. But this is a movie. It doesn't just have like one incel. It has two. Basically, like this character is voiced by Will Ferrell. I mean, I think Will Ferrell's not to sound too cringy, but he has been kind of funny in a lot of films, and he's done very good voice acting. And you have this other character that's voice acted by Jonah Hill, who's like this
Hmm.
kind of a jealous journalist type, where they compete for the same woman basically, and none of them are able to secure any kind of relationship there.
Right.
But they try to explore more of that theme, just kind of being a permanent outsider and not being able to dealing with power as well. Like, I mean, what do you do I mean, if you actually get the power, what do you do? Besides just being a jealous prick.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and there's some nature and nurture stuff. I mean, from what I've seen, this has shown up in memes. That you have a lot of these kind of meme templates that people are using from Megamind, and it's a little bit like your Metal Gear Revengeance or some of these properties that keep just coming back up. So I assume there must have been some value there because it wasn't like a great box office success at the time it was released. I don't think this is like this huge thing, but it's come back up again. It's become a bit more of a cult
Right.
classic film. But like this character, I mean, of course, he has like the weird head and everything, but he's like very sort of above average intellectual capability, but still not able to get a girlfriend. So there, we have a
Hmm.
bit more of like the kind of Bobby Fischer archetype, like this like
Ah, I
genius chess
see.
player who's not able to kind of understand women or secure women
So maybe
or
my take is wrong. I haven't seen the movie.
but no,
I just feel
it's
like
not
I've
wrong
seen.
at all because I mean, if we look at the Myers Briggs, like you have this website that's called Celebrity Types, and
Yep.
there they sort of sort personalities into these. They have different celebrities sorted by
Yep.
personalities, and this is like almost like doing the kind of Dungeons and Dragons,
Slot
morality grid
yourself into the morality
where,
grid.
where
Yeah.
you can just take any quote from any celebrity and just put them wherever you like on the chaotic evil or the lawful good
Yeah.
slider. And you could make any celebrity sound like an introvert if you put the right kind of quote from them. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but I mean, aside from that, I've now disclaimed it. I pointed that out. But they have like Bobby Fischer as a sort of INTJ personality type.
Hmm.
Basically, he's like that personality type, and that's also like the Megamind kind of personality
Yeah.
type. So you're not wrong in that assessment at all. It's a very much a sort of movie about that, that kind of person, and
Hmm. Hmm.
what do you do with power, and what do you do with jealousy, and how do you define yourself in relation to other people in society, and so on. I mean, people, I actually think it's kind of it's a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Let's just put it that way, and it's.
Oh, okay.
Um, So, well, the last guy I put in here, it's like I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but I know that like this is like one of the actually these sort of incel characters, if we could call it, in that
I
story.
haven't thought about him as an incel character, but yes. Yeah, he
But
would be, wouldn't he?
as I understand, like he
Literally
basically
gets
has
cucked. Yeah.
been like cucked by Harry Potter's dad, and he's always
Yeah.
had like a thing
Yeah.
with his mom, and then he has to,
Yep.
under the scenes, try to sort of protect being conflicted about, am I going to betray the am I going to try to betray the school on behalf of like the sort of old order, or should I
Yeah. Yeah.
protect Harry Potter and so on? So, uh, but I think that this is a type. As far as I understand, when he was instructed on acting, Alan Rickman, acting out this character, he was basically told that this is like a sort of sexless, virgin character. Basically, that was part of the how he chose
I didn't
to
know that.
play him.
Yeah.
So. It is. I think there are people like that in IRL. That there's like a lot of people find fit in exactly this kind of archetype of incel.
Yeah, you basically wear the, you adopt the antisocial, uh, hyper competency, I suppose, as
where I
as
mean
a
the
way
kids,
of separating yourself.
the kids think you're kind of scary. The adults think you're fucking loose.
Yeah.
That's kind of like
Yeah, well, yeah, it's the yeah.
realized that now, like being in my early 30s, like especially talking to teachers, where it's like I used
Yeah,
to
I
think a
mean,
lot of these
don't
people would
try to
be.
do the drive thing in public. People will think you're a fucking weirdo, you know?
I think there's like I mean I've talked to a lot of teachers who teach at like junior high schools and elementary schools, and like I know that there's a lot of kids who think that these people are super cool. Like you'll see like a gym teacher who like lives in a shitty apartment, and like he'll work out occasionally, but his life is just a total mess. There's a lot of kids
Yes.
who think that like this is the coolest guy in the world. This is the coolest guy in the fucking world, and like I'm looking at this guy like okay.
You gotta know the difference.
You got to know the difference, son.
Anyway, yeah.
Okay, but is there any like fictional characters that I missed here? Anyone you remember? That's like this kind of proto incel, true cell characters that.
No,
come
we,
off
we
the fiction?
covered Ryan Gosling, which would be a large one, because a lot of the things he's played in covers that. I think in my head that covers a lot of the types I can think of. Because you have the Joker, and then you have the physical deformities, or the people with the chronic disabilities.
I thought about putting the Phantom of the Opera in as well, but he's just a
That was
little
the
too
one I was
similar.
gonna say, actually, that the Phantom of the Opera would be one, but he also, in a sense, saying he gets the girl is not quite the same thing, but he does woo, what's her name, in the
I don't remember,
the
but
music.
I know we both know who we're talking about.
Yeah,
But I mean, he had a lot of initiative, but I think he's still a bit of, like
but
in
he's
this
also on the
category.
deformity scale, isn't he? Because he has a
Yes.
disfigurement, so he would fit in under the Quasimodo. I suppose he would be the Quasimodo Joker crossover. If
You cross them.
if we would expand this to an entire, you talked about the Dungeons and Dragons morality grid. I think the middle point in between those two would probably be be someone like Phantom of the
Yeah,
Opera.
the thing is that he predates both of them. That's why I get a bad taste doing stuff like that. But
Yeah, fair enough.
I think you
Yeah,
could trigger some people by saying that, oh, this like the Phantom of the Opera is like the Joker.
yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm gonna get all the
um,
like art people on my back for saying that, but
it's kind of like reverse time in reverse.
yeah, yeah.
But I think we've done enough on this slide. It does cover a
Time
lot
is
of
a
some of these archetypes.
sphere disk, and everything repeats. So let's see,
Flat circle.
flat circle or
Uh,
cube.
we're getting a little bit like I said, not a lot of power, but a lot of points here. I mean, like this is the like when the quote unquote incel became a thing in the mainstream culture. I think the like what's his name, Elliot Rodger, was the turning point for that. Like here you have
Yeah.
the L spiel. That's like
In many ways, Elliot Rodger is a very good example of an incel, because he's a man who doesn't necessarily look too bad. Like he's not horribly ugly, right?
no,
He comes from at least some amount of money, if I
yes,
remember correctly.
yeah. His father's like a movie director.
Yeah,
Basically, he had like this kind of
and
Asian trophy
apparently
wife.
is, as the reason for his actions, is quite high on the sensitivity scale.
Yes, perfect. Like just bringing it back around to what we talked about. Like
Yeah,
he is good looking. I think he's
yeah.
actually good looking. I mean, a little bit unusual. He just kind of like
Sure, and he's like what he's
Asian.
like 15. Like every boy looks kind of
Yeah,
off at 15 because you haven't really like set in, yet.
it's
Your
the
features
kind
aren't
of
locked in.
white Asian combination.
Yeah.
I mean, it can end in a lot of you get a lot of strange mixes, but I think he would have been
Usually they
kind
end
of
up
good
looking good,
looking.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
he has the makings of it. He goes through puberty. He might be like a
Yeah.
late bloomer, and his jawline continues to develop, and the facial structure, and he gets a little bit of muscle and body hair and so on. He would have
Mhm.
looked almost like the Chad, like this kind of like Nordic
Yes.
gamer type of look. But he was just kind of so sensitive about, and so kind of, I hate to say it, but entitled
Yes.
to stuff. And I think he wrote a lot of places that he was just horrified by all these black guys who were
Sorry,
able to
he
get
was
laid.
22, so I think it was past
Okay.
puberty at this point. But still,
I mean, some people take
I've
a lot
seen
of time
worse
to grow
guys.
to grow into themselves. And
Yeah.
I mean, he talked about all these kind of like ugly black guys who were able to get laid, with
Yeah.
when he wasn't, and he sort of felt entitled to the 10 out of 10 Hilda, basically,
Hmm.
which he was sort of denied. I mean, I know there was more stuff going on there. There was a lot of like abuse inside his family,
Yeah.
and dynamics that were just awful. And
Of course.
I mean, I think that like it's unfortunate, but I almost hope that he's discouraged some mixed race couples from actually breeding. Sorry to say, like, yeah, you could censor that maybe, but like if you're this kind of like white Asian couple, you look at this guy, maybe you ought to think again, because like that kind of like white Asian thing, that seems to have been like this complex thing that he always had,
Yeah.
in terms of developing these kind of weird schizo idiosyncratic thoughts that he had about things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if you find anything interesting in this ADL stuff. But
Well, we
sells.
could talk about the what makes an incel according to the ADL.
Yeah.
They are heterosexual men who blame women for society and for their lack of romantic success. I mean, that's correct, I'd say. Whether or not they are right when they say it is another question, I suppose. A subset of the online misogynist manosphere, which we outlined earlier, that includes pickup artists and men's rights activists, incels are known for their deep-seated pessimism and profound sense of grievance against women.
Yep.
These are the guys who keep posting "I hate women" on 4chan, basically. The incel ideology is rooted in the belief that women have too much power in the sexual romantic sphere and ruin incels' lives by rejecting them. And see, here's the weird thing with incels, because I would agree with the current state of things with like the first half of this 100%,
But they're not wrong.
But that your life is being ruined by it, that's where I'm starting to have a problem, because you're just admitting defeat, basically. You're saying that, society has gone off the rails and therefore I'm just gonna give up,
Yeah, that's. I mean, we talked about it previously. The why, kind of my problems with incels, and it's not just the fact that they kind of acknowledge themselves as, okay, I'm just like this. I am involuntary celibate. I can't find anything, even if I want to, and I'm probably going to be stuck in this predicament. But they seem to try to pigeonhole themselves into this kind of progressive civil rights project where they're
placing them as a minority on the progressive stack, almost.
As a kind of vulnerable group in society. Like they kind of, I should get my state mandated prostitute every week, and I should get like a small salary for it because I'm just so ugly, and I'm going to be rejected, like because of biorealism, or like because of, what do you call it, like this kind of scientific black pill. Then I can't get a good job, and I'm always going to be disadvantaged because I'm too short or too ugly or something, and so I have to just negotiate with society that they're going to put me in the progressive stack and just give me a little bit of money, and like.
And if I don't, I'm gonna, blow up my school.
They're negotiating like terms of surrender with the system, who basically
right,
have them there, and
yeah,
they're not.
And some of them are doing these terror attacks basically to tell the system that, hey, we need more support, right? Give us more money, basically. Give us more gibs.
State mandated GF would be nice. Now.
Right. Which is, I think, my chief grief with them, because I used the word when we were talking about it earlier, that they're almost like prisoners of war of the liberal regime, but they refuse to cooperate. So either they have to cooperate and sort of, take the gibs they can get, or the state are going to have to start killing them, because, like, why are we paying for them if they don't want to follow the rules?
I think it's a good metaphor. I feel kind of the same way there. That it is.
But that's also why you see. I mean, these journalists who are afraid of them. They are the most violent sector, apparently, of the manosphere. And considering all the
I believe
attacks that
it.
come from incel areas, I mean, this is why it's a powder keg.
I absolutely
Because
believe it.
until that negotiation is quote unquote done, and the incel gets UBI or whatever, you know, this is going to keep happening.
I mean, of course, none of these groups are ever going to be finished negotiating. They're always going to ask for more,
Of course not.
as we have seen. But I think they're right now they feel like they aren't getting enough.
Yeah.
And like the progressive regime, like conceding to their demands, it basically invalidates their entire kind of theology. Basically, it's like if we admit that like like white men are like victims, then it's kind of over for them.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. The coalition doesn't work anymore. The entire logic behind their project is just blown apart. So I don't think they're ready to concede that. Things are going to get a lot worse before they start trying to solve that problem.
Are we going to go into some of the terms, or are we going to hit that when we get into the incel wiki?
We look at the incel wiki here, but of course I don't know if you've seen any of that on the ADL article right here, but I've seen other ADL articles where they really, of course, hammer home the point of like the demographics of incels, and I've seen claims that the incel movement is like 80% white, and they're of course they're angry white men, and it's sort of very important to connected to hate speech, to whiteness, and to kind of like a threat to like this specific community that the ADL represents.
Got
So
four hits on white in this article, the majority of whom are white. Chad, a white straight male. When women are the enemy, the intersection of misogyny and white supremacy. Well, I mean, there's a lot, going on here. That's for sure.
Yes.
There's, but I mean that makes sense because this is a Western quote unquote phenomenon. I think it's happening to some extent in places like Japan, etc. But that's a bit of a different beast, and it doesn't seem to result in the same kind of violence.
I'm not too sure about it. I wish I knew more about it. I haven't had too much time to prepare. But that could be a topic for another stream if you look at the Japanese like grass eater movement, or in China where there's
the herbivores, surplus. Yeah.
There's a surplus, of men in China because of like one child policy and certain ideas they have about, honor and like bringing the name forward and so on. So there's way too many men. I think in India it's very similar. There's like an overabundance of men, and we're going to get back to
castes
that,
as well.
Lower castes. I mean, all men are not created equal, as we say, and that's especially true in the dating market. And like what I've seen is that in recent years in these incel communities is that there's been a huge influx of Indian men who have moved to the West, like who live in Germany, who live in like Scandinavia,
can't
France,
get the bobs,
or whatever, can't get the bobs and the vagine of basically. So, and I understand that. I don't think they're very well. It's not like these kind of lower caste Indian men. They're not. I don't think they're very high up on Stacy's.
No, and we talked about empathizing, and I do have sympathy for the incel. You're a being who, in very many ways, are hardwired to scream out for a romantic relationship with a woman, or maybe I should say sexual relationship. And you feel like wherever you turn, society's working against you. I would say that I think they're turning to the wrong places, but that's another topic. My point is that I understand the frustration.
Yeah, I mean they fall into the trap either of trying to fit into the progressive stack or just playing the villain that the system wants you to play.
Yeah, adopting the Joker, Joker mode.
Like that. Going on 4chan and threatening people on talk shows and threatening children and stuff. I mean, it's just creating a villain that kind of legitimizes the global homo structure. Like we need to clamp down on things. We need to censor because you have men like this out there. So it's quite useful. I mean, you have a lot of these boomer normies who think that like this is the biggest problem in society. These kind of like young white extremist men. If it wasn't for that, then everything would just be hunky dory.
Listening to edgy shows like the Longhouse on YouTube. Remember to like and
Oh
comment
no!
for the algorithm.
We created a
Reading books
radicalization
from
like
this
Josephine.
far-right extremist Nima Parvini, whom
I would,
actually the populist delusion arrived in the mail the other day.
finally it did. So have you read anything yet?
I've started it, but no, because of it came on Monday, and yesterday was Norway's Constitutional Day. So I hope all of you Norwegians listening had a good celebration. But I'm probably going to start reading it for real,
Yeah.
either tonight after this or tomorrow.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had a nice day yesterday. I hope you had too. This is like the first 17th of May in 2 years where there wasn't like big lockdowns. You
Yeah,
could actually go outside and go look at marches, and the weather was great, and people were in a good mood. I thought it was a
yeah,
great day. Overall, I was surprised. It's
yeah. And
been like
I
the best
noticed
17th
a
of May
couple
in
of
a long
weeks
time.
ago, nature is healing, quote unquote. All of the separators in the stores for like COVID stuff, all of the sort of the disinfectant alcohol, all of that stuff is just gone now. It's finally
Yeah,
it's all over,
I love it.
basically.
I
And
agree.
I just had a moment of like, wow, okay, it's finally actually 100% over, right? Because even before, when we'd had uh you know open periods, these things have stuck around, right? uh but now apparently it seems that the powers that be have declared that this pandemic is over.
You see the occasional moron with a mask.
Well,
It
sure,
does
but
happen, but the
the
majority are not.
institutional signs are gone.
And yeah, like you said, the washing alcohol is also gone.
Yeah,
That's true. But let's get back to the slide and try to
yeah,
get through.
sorry, that was a bit of a detour. I
All
have
right.
seen actually all of these things that you have included in the talk here, but I'm not quite sure if there was anything specific you wanted to talk about.
No, I thought it was just a fun little detour to take to look at how they've been represented because the
Yep,
sources we've looked at currently have just been American sources and how
yep,
they've been represented in American media. So I wanted to see, if there was something similar here. I mean, you have this the first one that's like it's this talk show that's called The Welfare Office, where they
yep,
ran an episode that's just called Worthless Men, and that's where the picture is from. Where they had this guy on there was like this kind of self-reported incel,
yep.
and
I can translate the quote here. It says that the world fucked them over from the start, so they can just fuck the world back, or fucking the world back is the only option. Oops, sorry, my cat is
that's
interested in
funny.
the keyboard all of a sudden.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, with this episode, I wonder if this guy was an actor. I mean, I've seen people talking about like Norwegian Reddit and stuff talking about it because the episode just had this kind of tone where like this stuff that he is talking about, it's not a real problem. It's not a real
Do you,
social
do you
problem.
think?
It's just it's this
Do you
guy
mean like
having
he was
delusions.
an actor, or that he sort of just, this is just a guy who's trolling, like he's
I,
adopting
I
he's
don't know.
doing what they
I
want
think
him to
like
do.
I'm like 15% sure that he was an actor or something, or
Okay.
he was like just paid money to pretend to be an incel on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, just a paranoid suspicion that I have because he didn't seem very committed to it, and I mean, you're basically selling the show in as like, okay, for those of you out there who are concerned with this incel stuff, we're going to bring in one of these guys and convince you that this is not a real problem. You just have a bunch of like white guys like this guy who are like completely normal, who have some
Sad and
delusions.
posting about frogs
Yeah,
and playing
they've
video
just
games.
they've
Yeah.
been on 4chan. They've just been terminally online a little bit. They're a little bit crazy, and we're just going to get some helpful people in there to sit and talk about it. I'm just going to say all you need to do is take a good shower, put on deodorant, and just be yourself. Get some
Yeah.
confidence, and go and
Yeah.
talk to people, and stop sobbing. And we've paid for a course and some life coaching. You're going to get 6 hours of life coaching after this, and roaring applause from the audience and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's so we contained it. We contained it, boys. We did it. We did it for another. We got another
Incel
3 years.
problem solved. Yeah.
We contained the incel problem, at least like in the mainstream mind. Of course, you have to kind of applaud them for the amount of effort they're putting into this containment stuff. I mean, it's quite remarkable. The second bullet point there, you had like a more recent documentary, quote unquote, series, like
Yeah.
on the kind of state broadcasting channel that's called Boys Against the World.
Yeah,
And
it
I
covers
mean,
a lot of the
all of the
issues of
episodes,
modern man, basically.
all of the episodes are basically, I think they're available on the public net. If you have to be on like a Norwegian server, like you can just use a VPN
Yep.
and watch them. So
But
I
I
mean, they
think
start off.
I'm not sure. I think there's is there English subtitles for that?
I don't think it is.
No,
So
okay.
that's gonna have to be a problem. We're gonna have to take some lessons
Yeah.
and watch
Yeah,
it.
you're gonna have
But,
to take some Norwegian lessons, I'm sorry. But to
the
all of
book,
our male listeners, it's well, I'm not gonna say it's a good watch, but it's an interesting watch. At least to get a feel for what the mainstream thinks of the modern man's problems
I mean, of course, it
and how it
starts off
laughs at
just
it at times.
trying to, map a little bit of what's out there and
Yep.
talk to some people, and then it just goes into, oh, did you remember this specific genocide thing? Like, did you
Yeah.
remember like this stuff here? Like, just connecting it to,
Yep.
the certain mid-century German
It's
group.
pretty much doing what you would expect it to do. Yeah.
So, okay, that's the second one. Of course, you have in Aftenposten, the Midwit Central newspaper, a lot of articles on this stuff. I mean, you could just look up this article because I wanted to tease something in the future.
Let me see
This
here.
is behind the paywall. Just wanted to do a quick.
I think I can finagle myself through it. Hang on.
So, I mean, you have articles in Aftenposten about this, and the author of a lot of them is the sort of the same guy who's this kind of young culture journalist,
I can't. Sorry.
lecturer dude who's basically made his name as like one of these. I don't know what to call them, like these kind of pet gay people that are just constantly in the news. I mean, he was just made his career as just being basically he's a gay person, and this is his perspective on life. And like it's very sort of pro LGBTQ progressive. See, that's his name right there. You can zoom in a little bit there, so you can read it. I don't know if I want to like get too personal, but I mean, I watched, in the close to the area where I live, I watched this guy do like a speech on
Yep.
the 17th of May, on the Norwegian Constitutional Day, where he was allowed to come up and speak, and he just turned the speech into like this kind of like pro gay rights thing. I mean, it was pretty nauseating. I'm going to be honest with you. And I've paid attention to him since then, where he's just been getting like a free pass, getting like a free job, where he writes all of these kind of shitty culture war articles for this newspaper, and you can pay for him to come and just hold lectures about like his life as a gay young man, basically. And the thing is, like, this guy wrote a book as well, where he talked about, he actually questions, his own assumptions in terms of sexual liberation. That he just talks about his life and like his relationship life and his sex life and so on as a gay zoomer, basically, and talks about how it's just fucking horrible, like this kind of Tinder hyper realistic porn world that he lives in, that he is basically advocating for. It's just like it's just a shithole. It's just like completely, it's a terrible lifestyle to live in. A completely like destructive, destructive life to have. But not having, like, you can see that he just doesn't have the tools to comprehend an alternative, because he thinks the alternative is like Sharia law, basically.
Yeah, they have like this article basically concludes that we have to support them somehow. We have to placate them to make sure there's not more of them. Which is sort of like we get into the incels as just another part of the progressive stack, just another minority that needs to be catered to keep this ship afloat. instead of looking at the root causes that cause increase in incels.
Now that I think about it, actually, I would not be surprised if the author here becomes like a Milo character in the future. Like he becomes like
Oh
this kind
God,
of
really?
counter jihad guy. I mean, I'm listening to myself like describing this guy who's like this. He's basically like this gay dark triad attention whore. He needs to be in the media, and he's like a tad more open, about these topics. Where he's towing the line on the progressive stack.
He's
But
just
in the
he's just a
future,
couple of conservative talking points away from being Milo.
yeah, in the future, if it feels like he's not getting enough attention,
Right.
then he's going to have to become like a counter
You're gonna
jihadi,
have to
like
write like a conservative book and
yeah,
do a
white
heel turn
Sharia or
and
something.
yeah.
Do the Richard Spencer routine. I mean, I
Hey, I mean the
I've
Richard
thought more
Spencer.
about it. That,
If I just keep moving, my enemies can't pin me down.
but I mean, I thought about that angle because it's a thought that I've been having for a while, like this idea of all of these gay men with like dark triad personalities would have some combination of narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism, and like this need to kind of be the center of attention, like this
Yeah.
kind of extroverted, like vulnerable. They call this, what do you call it? You have the vulnerable narcissist, and then you have like the kind of Trump style,
Yeah.
the kind of braggadocious, like extroverted narcissism, basically, that where you have to be the center of attention all the time. And it doesn't matter what kind of attention you get, like negative attention or positive attention, as long as people are talking about you.
Any attention is good attention.
I think that's, like this psychology is what's driving a lot of these kind of gay public figures to do what they're doing. And like they have to stay relevant and be more controversial. So they're going to just start moving towards more like controversial politics until they become like this kind of, based alt-right 2.0 stuff.
Yeah.
To I don't know if I'm completely off on this, but I'm just starting to see a pattern here, like more of the stuff. So I'm actually going to put down a prediction now that this guy maybe in like 5 years he's going to be considered to be
All right, we'll keep an eye on him.
We'll keep an eye on that. We're going to group. If it doesn't happen spontaneously, he's going to have to be groomed into it by watching the Longhouse. A lot of stupidity for me tonight, but okay.
Yeah,
I think
we're having fun.
Have fun and just take a look at the some more fun stuff. Here we have the.
Do we want to look at the
stuff.
links here?
We're just gonna have to look at the links one by one here. I
Yeah.
mean, like I love this website. When I talk about like I find a lot of this incel stuff really appealing, is that they're able to create a sort of entertainment product out of their own predicament in a way that.
God.
Look at the one underneath.
Yeah, it's a good meme.
Happiest nation in
Incel.
the world.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have to commend the incels in this website because they have this very comprehensive encyclopedia on everything related to them, where they're able to tell their own story in a quite
A survey
detailed
from
way.
incels.co suggests that 59% of incels are middle class, 35% lower class, and 7% upper class. That's interesting. But yeah, as you said, they seem to have a lot of data on their own kind.
Yeah, it's much more comprehensive, and they cover all angles. A lot of charts, and I mean, this is not going to show up as like first page results on Google, but you can find it if you're willing to look for it. And here you can get like these really comprehensive arguments and studies on everything relating to it, where they're just gonna every little thing that could be affecting and moving the needle in terms of creating incest and making the culture the way it is right now. It's going to be covered here somewhere. Like it's just a staggering amount of work that have been put into putting this stuff together. So I mean,
there's a lot of work going into here about how the communities aren't mostly white, or are at least 50-50 a lot of the time.
See, the screen is a little
Interesting.
bit small for me, so you're
Oh,
gonna have
sorry.
to do more of the reading.
I'm gonna.
It's a bit of the setup that I have.
Incel forums are often stereotyped as angry white male communities. However, large polls on incels.co and brain cells showed that only around half of their user base are or were white. I don't know, are or were. I guess this is
Oh, no.
grammar. I don't think they actually changed race. A peer-reviewed study also came to the conclusion that incel
I
forums
thought it was
aren't
like a
mostly white.
suicide joke or something.
Yeah. Data from Pew Research in Table 1 suggests that whites make up 71% of Reddit's US user base, but only 52% of Brain Cell's US members. A difference with a 95% CI of 13 to 24%, and it goes into very high detail about where these are coming from. But yes, there's a lot of weaponized autism here.
Nice.
Young incels in the US, adult incels in the US. Here's some of your graphs. Just over half 18 to 34-year-olds have no steady partner. Yeah. Rise of sexless young men. Here you have 2008 again.
I mean, you really
what
need
is
to take time to explain a lot of these charts. It's not just
Yeah.
immediately obvious to
No,
read
it's
them.
not. But so I mean, it's a majority white problem, but I almost, after reading this, I would say maybe it's a class problem. To
Yeah,
a certain
I mean,
degree.
I think
And
it affects.
and that turns out as being white in a lot of the Western countries.
Yeah, like you said, it's because we're in the West, then it's
Yeah.
it's going to be majority white. That makes sense. But I think there's also like certain demographics that are more affected or less affected by this. I mean,
Sure,
it
yes.
seems like to me like Africans seem almost a little bit immune to this stuff for some reason.
Yeah.
Like it's not that you don't have Africans that are probably in like the short end of the height spectrum, or they don't have good facial aesthetics or something. But I don't know, they just have too much of that kind of like base grugginess to
Yeah, I was going to
end up
say
here.
I think it's a lot of grugness and a lot of the let's say issues that a lot of European countries have had the past few years will probably tell you that a lot of Africans don't seem to have a problem ending up in sexual encounters.
Yeah,
I guess that's the
e-
that's the political way
even
of
if
saying
they,
it.
even if they don't have that, I mean, they just don't seem to be bothered. They don't have the same
Yeah, that
sensitivity,
too. Yeah.
that this kind of hypersensitive personality
Mhm.
where like it's precious introverted.
Yeah, they don't get
They don't have
knocked
that.
out by this. Yeah.
No, they can get rejected and they just they keep
Move
trying.
on. Yeah.
Based Omar, let's see.
Yeah. So this is the incel glossary. Is there any specific ones you want to look at, or should we just
We
scroll
could look at
and have some
the
fun?
content table actually and just
Yeah.
see. You have like the dash cell there where
Yeah.
they don't just talk
It's a
about the incel, but they have all these kind of like prefixes like the gym cell.
the subcategories of the so you have if you're a gym cell, you're an incel who copes by working out. Height cell is obviously if you're too short. A bald cell is probably premature hair loss. Work cell, someone whose work preoccupies any freedom to enjoy any activities that may be conducive to the chance of sexual intercourse. Right.
So they go very into detail about like the various reasons people end up in this stuff and like the type of personalities.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, they lean really high on this kind of like bio realism, or this kind of like what do you call like this evolutionary psychology and like physical determinism
Uh-huh.
for the like the way they think about it, where you're kind of born with certain genes for whether it's for height or hair loss or muscle mass, or like they will talk about your like private parts, how
Yeah.
they look and the size of them and so on, and like your facial
This is where the
symmetry.
maxing comes in, because you'll hyper focus on like one thing
Yeah.
at a time usually, and try to
I mean, there's
improve it.
of course, like glossary that comes from these sort of RPG games. I mean, if you play Dark Souls, you have to Dex max, or they talk about strength maxing.
Yeah, yeah.
And they use that metaphor to like you have to like max out some certain like you go to the gym four times a week in diet so you can get abs, or you can try to get the rhinoplasty so your nose looks more Anglo or something, or
because
hair,
just getting this one thing is gonna solve everything.
No, like
usually.
you try to basically like super specialize into one thing to hope to have a shot. I mean, they have like this sort of Asian matching. It's got easy mode stuff where you have to go to a certain area of the globe. Like if you're white and then you go to Asia, then like the average height is a lot lower, and you have like a greater chance of finding someone either as a kind of like fetish object or as someone who would consider you a serious partner.
Yeah.
So yeah, the mogging here, where they talk about like dominating people, or like you could be height mogged, where like someone's taller than you and they're making fun of you or they're making you look submissive, or look dominated because by standing next to you or making fun of your height, or money mogged, or like car mogged, bicep mogged, all these
wrist mogged.
It's so
I
detailed.
can I mean, it is just describing sort of how men hierarch themselves naturally, I suppose. But it's bringing a whole new level of autism to it.
I think if you are a man, you have encountered some of this stuff.
Well, yeah, of course, that's what I'm saying. This happens naturally, right? But categorizing it like this and obsessing over it, I think, is not very.
But I just enjoy
good.
the entertainment here. Like that's why.
Well, I agree. It's very funny.
So they of course use the pill vocabulary, the prefix pill.
Yep.
Whatever,
so it's a red pill, it's the blue pill, a black pill to. I suppose that's the sorry, that like nothing that you do on the personal level is gonna.
It's like they talk about it. It hasn't even begun, or I was dead before it started, because you're born with a certain genes, and
you just don't have a chance.
If they aren't good, you can't compete. So you're just gonna have to resign yourself to defeat. That's the black pill.
Pink pill, the femcel version of the black pill that either inverts several black pill claims, accusing men of being the hyperborean sex, or otherwise asserts that women are disadvantaged in the dating market. It's a femcel philosophy. Interesting. I disagree. Not that there doesn't exist women who are, I suppose, in theory, so unattractive that they're going to have a hard time finding men, but I have a hard time believing that it's never going to work. Yeah,
I think
referring back to the Florida man thing.
Certain women who will, if they want to find some long-term partner, are going to have a hard time finding some quality long-term partner that they could live together with and show off to their friends and just like coexist with. That's actually, I'm not going to downplay that. That's not going to be easy for everyone. See here, the
Chad, the physical attractive male, typically white with a PSL. Is an acronym for 3 consecutive forums that substantially, whatever. It has a rating of 8 out of 10 or higher. Ethnic counterparts: Tyrone, Black, Chadam, or Chabdul. Chad Priest is the Indian, and Chang is East Asian. I didn't know about these like subcategories of Chads. And then there's the what's the escort theory? A pragmatic philosophy that proposes to isolated adult virgins that they should just man up and get over their issues with safe prostitutes until they fix their sexual frustration. Some advocates consider this the only options for incels as long as they live. Interesting.
So I would fall under that when I claim that they, like a section of these people are just kind of so...
sad boys, like, basically.
Sad. They're so deformed that they're just going to have to get to some state mandated, like, prostitute or something. Let's see. Femoid. We gotta look at the
term for human females. Okay. It suggests that females are not fully human.
Yeah, the picture there with the Avril Lavigne. I think that was this short guy. Let's see. Fox Zone. Do we have? We can look at this kind of hierarchy that they have, where they have like everything from the Chad to the Brad.
Yeah,
To
I was trying to
Shannon
see
to
if
the
I can
Dan.
find like there male sociosexual dominance hierarchy, king. Okay. So here's all the things that are status signals in humans, and here you have the male archetypes, which is the alpha, the sigma, the beta, the gamma, and the omega.
This is the Vox Day one. I think he missed the
Yep.
delta here, and he put in the sigma. That's
Yeah, and then he
a bit
added
more of a joke
yeah.
there.
Yeah, that's true. But they usually see themselves as either gamma or the omega type. Let's see.
Or sigma if
Chads,
they're delusional.
fuckboys. What is this? This is the tripartite model. You have the Chads, the fuckboys, overlapping with the woke soft boys. And then you have the ignorant soft boys overlapping with nice guys, and then incels are part of the nice guys sphere. But they can't. So is this like what gets you women, basically?
So I mean,
So you can get pussy basically if you're a nice guy and you're also a woke soft boy or an ignorant soft boy, which I suppose makes sense, right?
I've never heard that term soft boy before. I've heard about the
No, me
fuck boy
neither.
stuff,
But it makes sense. Like you say woke soft boy, I have an image in my head of who that
yeah,
is.
me too.
We're derailing a bit here, so I'm gonna go to the
I don't
next
mind.
link you had. but this one
This one is the best
is
one. Is my
entertaining.
favorite.
So
Favorite.
this is the
part.
decile. It's the decile scale. Is a 1 to 10 scale widely used to rank looks. I mean, I think we're all familiar with, oh, she's a 10, right? Or she's a 9. Yes, calling someone a 9 or a 10 is extremely common lingo.
That's from like the dating complex. That's this sociological study that was done, I think, in the
Yes.
it's in the last century, basically. But
So here we
they've
have the
extrapolated
definitions of the male and the female attractiveness scale. Now, of course, I mean, having a sort of shorthand for like, oh, that's a 10 or that's a 4 or a 5 is useful, but I think some of the incels are taking it a bit too far here.
Yeah, they've created.
But it does show the thought or something we were hitting on earlier about how bad does it have to be for a woman compared to a man before you start having problems.
I see. I thought it was Emma Watson at 10 there. It's probably somebody else, but I noticed a lot of people put her in like the. This is as good as.
I'm not sure if I would put her in a 10, but
she's a
but
British
I can understand the point. Should we start with the men or the women?
You could look at the men there.
Okay. Top to bottom or bottom to top?
I think top to bottom would be the best.
All right. So at the top 10, we have the Chads and the Chabdules and all of the 10 out of 10 considered attractive by 99% of females, square-faced with masculine features and hunter eyes. Hunter eyes is this thing where it's like you have like narrow focused eyes. 9, nearly a 10, but the jaw isn't quite as chiseled, eyes aren't quite as sharp, etc. So basically almost there. That's what's
little
separating
softer,
it.
but,
Yeah. 8, objectively good looking, but looks suffer from 3 or more mild flaws. Girls will call you cute or handsome. 7, well above average, but women will rate you as being average. 7, suffer from at least one minor major flaw, physical flaw, like the nose on the right. This is interesting because it's the, women will rate you as average for this. This is interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially like, I mean, they're not entirely wrong, and that has to be said.
No, I'm not
descriptions of
denying
how
it.
this works in a kind of like cold mechanical way. I think they're actually right, especially with like women tend to lump men together between like good or bad, basically. If that's what they think is like husband material and stuff they just don't like. And this guy has like, what's wrong with him? The nose? Is it crooked or something, or is it like too big?
I think it's just too big. I think that's the contention there. Yeah. 6, he's alright, I guess. Barely has attractive features. Not likely to be an incel, but finds much more trouble dating than a 7.
This
Neither
is
attractive.
Like KSI or something, like the YouTuber.
Is it?
I think that guy's a YouTuber.
Okay.
He's like a gamer, plays
Okay.
FIFA and stuff.
A 5 is neither attractive nor unattractive. These males will encounter significant trouble when looking for a spouse. And this is this Ed Helms? Is that his name? I think so.
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't think of him that way, but okay. Yeah, I'll go with it.
Yeah, looking at him, you'd think that, okay, sure, he's not the most attractive person on the scale, obviously, but I wouldn't say he would have any overall trouble finding himself a wife. Now, he probably won't find himself a 10 unless he's very rich, but he wouldn't have a problem finding himself a wife, I think. But I mean, this is, I suppose, from the incel point of view, this is a male looking for someone more attractive than them. Is that it?
It's hard to tell.
Maybe I'm assuming too much here.
So with the male scale, you're going into the red at 4. With the female, you think you're going into the red at 1.
So I think the idea here is that from 4 and below, you're going to have major troubles, if not being totally unable to find a spouse. Only a few 4s succeeding mating with 1s or 2s, and some are called soy boys, because they put up with cheating to get laid. I do, to some extent, agree with that. But that comes down to what you like, because this rating is purely physical. And I would say that what you get with a lot of soy boys is not always unattractive women, but obviously they're either insane, heavily leftists, insert isn't that the same thing joke, and very unstable. So
yeah, you have that
they might be more attractive than a 4, right? Or a 1 or a 2. They might be as somewhere between 6 and 8, right? But they'll be, emotionally damaged and unstable and
they have some kind of like unfavorable arrangements in their relationship.
Right.
Too much into it, but yeah, really.
But yeah,
the woman is allowed to cross certain boundaries that ideally you
so
probably not agree to if you have.
I think the scale could benefit from expanding outward over just looks, but I do understand if we're looking at just looks, then I suppose
like from this incel perspective, it's like it's just all about that, They really emphasize this kind of hard, what do you call it, the scientific black pill and fatalist biorealism.
Then you have number 3, people will bully you because of your looks. Lowest possible ranking male to still have a chance to pay a prostitute to lose their virginity. So is that implying that if you're lower, the prostitute will decline? That might be their perspective here.
Depends. You might have to pay more as well. It does depend. It's the fickle market.
Number 2 possesses several serious flaws in facial structure. You look at that creep, I bet he's a serial killer. And number 1, actually preferable to being a 1,
does he look
a
that
2 or 3.
Weird? I mean, the number 2 guy.
He is, I mean, unfortunate. Let me put it like that. But it's not hopeless, I think. But it's unfortunate. And a number 1 might actually be preferable to being a 2 or 3 because someone might pity fuck or date you. The majority of women consider 1 to 3s to be subhuman. And I mean, now we're entering Quasimodo territory here.
So Danny DeVito territory here. We get.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, even he got laid, so it's.
Well, that's the thing, It's. I think it's in the end, it's getting laid isn't always all about looks. It's about what you're willing to trade in the transaction, so to speak, in the sexual marketplace. So let's do the female ones. You have the perfectly conventional attractive. It is impossible to fail at life. If you become homeless, a modeling scout will scoop you up in under a day. You're still on the easy street on number 9, but it will take you longer to get scouted than a 10. Anyone who considers you to be beautiful and sexy. 8. You're very attractive. You will constantly be bombarded by thirsty men. Men will spend their entire life saving to keep you in a relationship with them. 7. Your sexual rejection rate is 4%. Unless you are a prude, you will have at least 20 sexual partners before marrying. Jesus Christ. 20?
It's very detailed.
What?
It seems very specific and detailed.
Yeah. But that's quite a lot, though. Maybe I'm just too optimistic, or maybe things aren't as bad.
Well, it does depend.
In my circles?
It does depend on where you live. I think for people
Yeah.
who live in the big city, that seems to be a lot worse than people who live
Yeah, maybe.
more out in the country. And it depends on how quickly they become sexually active and so on. But
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, it's just that like when you have all this tech with the dating apps and the close proximity to people in these big cities.
Yeah, that's true. That's
it's
true.
a certain I think trap people fall into where their numbers just go up in the clouds like really fast. It's quite easy if you're kind of like.
I mean, looking at some things, I follow this women posting their L's online on Twitter, and some of the things that modern women engage in are quite depressing. And then they'll sort of like sad post about it on the internet for attention and assurances, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't think
6,
most of them enjoy it. To be honest, I think they,
no, I don't think
know
so
there's a few
either.
women
But
who are kind of happy with this that kind of life. But I think
well, the
most of
ones that
them
are happy with it are probably good looking enough to be able to step out of it whenever they want to, right?
Yeah.
People call you pretty and cute at number 6. You can use your charm and above average looks to cheese your way through a career. Fair enough.
HR woman, I guess.
Well, I don't think you're at HR there. I think you can climb higher with this. I think HR is a 5 or a 4, because you're gonna have to use other methods to wield power.
Mm.
Perfectly average on 5. You're not ugly, but you aren't beautiful either. You will be pursued by male 5s, but you will reject them in favor of a chance with an 8 or 9. I think we can all agree that's how the women work.
It seems plausible, yeah. You get a lot of those, unfortunately. So.
4s are at just the right level to get with any level 5 or 6 or 7 male. As a result, 4s can have dozens of sexual partners. These women ride the proverbial cock carousel and settle with male 5s.
We have Amy Schumer there.
Carousel.
I mean, I think people don't dislike Amy Schumer. I don't think like she's that much uglier than number 5 or.
Well, I mean, she would have to lose some weight, but
in that photo, I think the whole thing is like she does the stand-up,
right.
doing the stand-up comedy stuff that I think makes people dislike her even more.
Yeah.
I mean, if she wasn't doing that, I don't think she would be like specifically targeted for her looks.
No, of course not.
That way.
Number 3, the lowest you will date is a 4. You may even get with a 6. Either way, you're not ugly enough to have a limited amount of potential partners. 2, you can marry a desperate 4 or 5 male, and you have 2 to 8 sexual partners before the age of 30. That is also quite high, considering it's a 2, but maybe. Like a male number 1. Sorry.
Like volume and effort you're willing to put into it does
Yeah,
matter.
fair enough.
You're not just delivered this stuff. I mean, some people are quite, a lot more active than other people, and like with less sensitivity. There's
yeah.
People do stupid stuff on drugs. Let's just say that, or
yeah.
When they're drunk.
And then the final one, like a male number 1, you're conventionally hideous. Much like a male number 1, a male 6 will pity date you. Male 4s will go for you because they have lost hope.
Interesting.
But yeah, the main takeaway here, I think, is that on the pure look scale, this starts at a 4 for men and a 1 for a woman, where you're out of hope. according to the incels.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be just kind of like supply and demand sort of market structure thing.
Yeah, and here they're looking at OkCupid data. I think, I don't think anyone disagrees with the hypergamy arguments, or the hypergamy, I suppose, model, or
See, here they have like a table with the names for these
analysis.
numbers,
Yeah.
so that it's really funny. I mean, we
Oh,
didn't see
here's
the names of
the
the
yeah. Okay, so you have the number 10 is a Giga Chad, yeah. Then you have a Chad, and then you have a Chad Light. You have a high tier Normie, and then a Brad is the number 6. And a Tanner is the number 5. Oh, my browser is frozen. Hopefully you can see it
Oh,
still.
well, I can still see it.
Okay,
See
we'll hope
the
it comes back
Tanner.
soon.
Number 4 is the Melvin. And yeah, number 3 is the incel-ish, and then you have the male cell and the true cell at number 1. So for the women, the 10 is the Giga Stacy, the 9 is the Stacy, the 8 is the Stacy Light, and then the 7 is the high tier Becky, 6 is the Becky, 5 is the low tier Becky. They're a lot less creative with the women names. In this one, 4 is Gertrude.
Gertrude.
Number 3 is like the fem cell ish, and then the 2 is the fem cell, and number 1 is like the true fem cell.
Oh,
I mean, I
can
like
see it now,
the
but
articles.
it's,
If you get the browser up to look at the articles on like Tanner and Melvin and Brad, because it's like
I'll see if I can.
it's a bit too much of the author that's kind of inside of these articles. They post a lot of specific stuff about this is what Brad's like and this is what.
What's
Tanner's
interesting
like,
here
so.
is that the 6 and the 5 is the beta bucks sphere here. So if you're on one of those, I'm sorry, but you're unfortunately part of the beta bucks brigade. The Tanner, is that what you want?
You don't have to. Yeah, you could look at the Tanner. You don't have to be beta bucks. Just don't participate in it. Stop looking at e-girls and like.
Go to church and
go to church. They'll do OnlyFans. I guess
yeah.
Just get out of it. You don't have to be there. Tanner
is a 5. Fits between the Melvin and the Brad. They are often mistaken for Melvins, who are really a third-rate Chad, but only by people who do not understand or at least recognize the many nuanced layers a Chad operates on so effortlessly. I'm sorry, it just makes it sound...
Melvin has. Is Melvin the 4?
Melvin here. Low tier normie of
See,
Melvin.
This one has a lot of info.
Oh,
he's like a 4 out of 10 male.
Yeah. Although the low tier normie is underprivileged among normies, they are privileged when comparing to those who are somewhere on the inceldom spectrum. Oh god, what is this? Ah, okay. So every Stacy will have like 2 orbiting Melvins. But all of these Stacys are orbiting around a central Chad. That actually makes sense.
Nice
yeah, I can see it.
You didn't even have to explain it. It was just...
The amount of work that is going into this.
I mean, just the amount of effort that they put up. It's very rare that you see anything.
This is a Brad. Is this from like, those like sites that like generates AI compositions of like photos of people?
This person does not exist. Is that
right? Yeah.
Referring to?
And they've just like hit that until they find like guys who look kind of like that.
Trained an artificial intelligence to
create the perfect
that,
Brad
don't exist on the scale of like 1 to 10.
Yeah. Let's look at the Giga Chad.
That would be a fun project to.
Yeah.
A fun project to do actually.
Here's the Giga Chad.
Actually, the thing is that like the guy who is like the actual Giga Chad, I think he's like 5'8" or something, 5'8", 5'9".
This guy,
even like the model guy who's in the photo there, like
he's a height cell.
He would be disadvantaged because he's a little bit on the short side.
Yeah. What's a Giga Stacy? Okay, sure. Well, we should probably move on because we spent a lot of time this, but
It
we
was
can have a
worth
lot
it.
of fun looking at the Incel wiki.
Totally worth it.
Do we want to look at some of the causes of celibacy from their website?
Yeah,
or do we...
that's also a nice article.
So, causes of sexlessness and inceldom. Mental disorders, neurodivergence, autism, schizophrenia. I mean, that makes sense. I think we talked about it before, where we have sort of like two categories of incels. One which is the, chronic disease or mental disorders or physical deformity in one camp, and then the sad white boys in the other camp.
Yeah, you have the sort of foobar
Yeah.
incels that is like legitimately, this kind of lower 5 to 2% of men. But
Yeah.
then you also have like this kind of oversensitive white boys, and I don't want to be like a dick to those people if they're watching this, but like I think those people could be rehabilitated just to be like happy or productive citizens if they did
Yeah.
the right things. But they would probably be in that kind of mental disorder camp, being bullied. Yeah, that's
Being
also
physically
another one.
unattractive might get you to be an incel. But being bullied, yeah, that might be a big one. But it is also, it's one of those things where no matter what you do, you can't seem to remove bullying from the society, from like
The
human
thing is that I
society.
think
It's
it's
a
like
social corrector,
success
right?
as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, a lot of these people who are quite driven and did great things were also bullied.
Yeah. So I
these
wouldn't tie, maybe it ties into virginity, but I'm not gonna say that it like ruins your life.
I
It
think it is.
can,
I think it is correlated. If you have a
obviously.
lot of those traits that puts you outside of the sexual marketplace, you're probably also going to be bullied
Yeah,
at some
fair
point.
enough. High BMI or being overweight, I mean, I
That's
think that goes
fixable,
for
right?
everyone.
I mean, it's painful to lose weight, but I mean, you could fix.
Yeah, that's
Premature
something you
birth.
can do. Premature birth. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things with premature birth that might impact your life in
Yeah.
general. Disease, I mean, obviously. Low social status, obviously.
Yeah, that can also be fixed.
But that can
It's
be fixed. Yeah,
not
you
easy.
can work on that. So, physical disability, there we're back. Slow life history strategy, inherited from parents. What is that? Animal
It's like a
species
low
differs in
bandwidth.
so-called life history traits. Ah, okay, right. Because you're, it's the, yeah. So there are I think it's called the fast life history strategy, which is, it can be socially, quote unquote, induced, as sort of like a fear response in the mother, or it comes from the genes, in some cases, and this basically hypercharges your development because the baby is born basically with the genetic code of, oh god, we're in danger, you need to grow up as fast as possible. So it'll affect things like growth, as in height. It'll affect things as how early you enter puberty and exit puberty, how early a woman or a girl is able to bear children, etc. So it's basically activating fast life mode. And I suppose the incel thing here is that if you have the slow life strategy in your parents or in your birth, then you will actually gain negative traits, or it'll take longer for you to achieve higher traits. So maybe the argument is that if you develop slower, your chances of being bullied increases, increasing your chance of inceldom, I
Yeah,
guess.
I see, but that could also be remedied, right? I mean, if you
Well, yeah,
have this
sure.
strategy, you're likely to live
That's
longer.
part of the thing, right? If you
Yeah.
give up at like age 18 or like 22,
I mean, if you have a slow life, then that's just the beginning for you, right? I mean, you're
yeah,
probably not, considered to be actually getting into that before you're older, anyway.
yeah, yeah.
So, mean, you're not doing this kind of high time preference life. You're actually going to plan things out and have like a middle class, educated kind of existence, and so you can take it slower.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be jealous of the Tyrones who are having 6 kids at like 17 years old.
Okay, so it's all of these things can be affected by the past life strategist. Yep, higher sex drive, good looks, etc. Ideology and religion can either be a positive or a negative factor. Religious, a strict environment predicts remaining virgin until early adulthood. Sex negativity within puritanical religions, or ideologies like feminism or environmentalism, may cause you to be an incel, I guess. But aren't you voluntary being a celibate then? If like
Yeah, this is kind of
you're
a
a
tricky
Christian
thing.
and you're practicing, or like if you're, well, maybe, I don't know.
I mean, it's very, if you're like a traditional Christian in this culture, it's going to be very difficult for you to participate in these
Ah, okay, so
activities where
it's
you find,
that
sex
that's the
partners and
argument.
stuff. So I
Well,
think,
that's
yeah,
fair, but I mean, you would still be able to go within your own communities then to find success, wouldn't you?
that's what you have to do. But if
Yeah,
your opportunities are limited, then it might take a long time. So
yeah,
you are kind of involuntarily celibate longer than you would like.
yeah, yeah. String of bad luck. I mean, yeah, maybe. um, and you have perma-virgins, virgins who are older than 30. Uh, early adult, dry spells, a dead bedroom. All right. Well, so there's a lot of... I mean, if you want to go on a deep dive research of incels, there's a lot of reading that can be done. But I think at this point we should move on.
Yep, I agree.
But I'm gonna have some fun with this later, I think.
I mean, you could go on forever here.
Yeah,
So, I mean, but this is a bit of the same thing, like with the wiki, that it's very entertaining to read. That's
yeah.
why I titled the slide "The Incel Entertainment Complex," and I named some of the channels that are still active on YouTube, at least. Like the Sandman channel, he doesn't have like a formal avatar, but he makes like videos on commission. And he has like this larger Patreon audience where he makes this type of like he's been making it since like 2013, 2014. And it's really sort of the same kind of stuff where it's like stories about women who are crazy, or stories about how difficult it is to be a man. And I mean, if you've seen it, you kind of know it. Uh, I mean, with the last one, I was, with some of these channels, I was listening to the videos that he made that I was watching in 2014. And then I'm listening to the ones that are coming out in 2022. And it sounds almost like he's been replaced by some kind of weird artificial intelligence that's just mimicking his voice for some reason.
Oh, really?
I don't know why, because I've never seen him on camera, but it's a fun little exercise, not just for him, but excuse me, for to look at some of these like old school YouTubers, where you can go really far back and see what they
How they
made like
changed.
10 years ago, and see how they
Yeah.
changed. Like some of with seen some posts by, this is a bit of an aside, but it's a fun thing to bring up there. But the amazing atheist, it's a guy that was like one of these early YouTube celebrities, and he's not like an incel channel, but I remember watching him when I was in high school.
Right.
He's just still making movies. I couldn't even believe it, because they were, after the Roe v. Wade thing was revealed, and he had like this big
Hmm.
video that he put out about coping and seething about the decision and so on. And it's interesting how little he has changed. He just seems to have the same opinions that he had 10 years ago. It's like absolutely no
It's
intellectual
just,
development. No,
it's the same incel points being made as 10 years ago.
yeah, well, I mean, for
Yeah.
the Amazing Atheist, it's a little bit different. It's not like an incel channel. But I'm just talking about like these other channels that I've seen that have
Oh,
been.
you were talking unrelated
Yeah,
to... Yeah, okay, sorry.
just a little bit unrelated. Like with you're familiar with him, like the Amazing Atheists, or that
Yeah,
channel, maybe.
I suppose, is the the correct terminology.
Another sort of persistent channel that I noticed is like the Chris Stuckman, like the movie review guy. who
Oh yeah, yeah.
who's been doing it for like almost 10 years now, and you could listen to. It seems like his voice has like dropped 2 pitches, and he sounds completely dead inside in the newer videos. Like the older ones, he's actually like having a lot of fun and just enjoying his life.
I guess
But
he's just now it's just a paycheck.
like being this kind of like apolitical, cinema enthusiast, it's not as hot in
Yeah,
2022 as it was,
yeah.
I think, 10 years ago. But I'm just going to get back on point with the Sandman. Yeah, it's just kind of the same stuff that the dwindling audience for this one, because it's not like, I don't think it's political and like hardcore political enough. Turd Flinging Monkey is another one. Who like his YouTube channel now? It's just like he's just selling sex toys on YouTube, and he has like this more edgy content on Odyssey, I think,
Wait,
or
can
on
I
BitChute. But
turd
he has like
flame?
you talk about like incel stuff and this kind of like MGTOW
Oh
stuff
yeah,
cranked
it's
up
just
to,
reviews of sex toy.
yeah, it's just cranked up to 11 basically, like this kind of like white Sharia, women need to be enslaved, stuff like this is what we have to do to. You're wasting your time. Like he had some discussions with the distributist, as I mentioned to you
Yeah, yeah.
previously, that you can find, and it's like this absolutely counterproductive stuff where he's just talking about, I'm not going to have kids for the white race or because God says so, like the Sky Fairy, or
Yeah.
give me a real reason to want to have families. If I'm gonna, it's so risky and women are so awful, and it's like this. It's really this kind of like like I don't use the term lightly, but misogynistic is probably appropriate, I think, for this channel.
Right.
At some point, you're gonna have to be able to say that something is misogyny, right? And like this would, I think, would be inside of that spectrum. There's like the Tails Black Pill channel. That's another one that's like run by this kind of Indian man that lives in Germany, and he just posts like TikTok videos and YouTube clips and stuff from like these women who talk about their
Yeah, I
the kind
get
of
that.
guy they want.
I get that sometimes, probably because of, YouTube algorithm working in mysterious ways. I get like recommended things that are called like incel compilations, which is, videos supposedly, I guess, just for incels, but it's just like, it'll just be like a woman dancing on TikTok, right? And it's supposed to, the message here is like, oh, this is all women are, I guess.
Well, you have some of
Like
these
you're just
more
gonna
like
hate on the Stacys or something. I don't know what the content really is. Like,
the Stacy Blackpill stuff is more like these women sit and talk about, I want a guy, like if you're shorter than 6 foot, then walk out the door.
yeah, yeah.
If you're not like this, if you don't look like this, then don't talk to
So
me.
it's just doom porn for
It's
incels
yeah,
then.
it's just doom porn, or like these uglier, like these women who are like less impressive, who will brag about how many Tinder matches they have, or who just brag about the open relationships or how many people they slept with and stuff. And
Yeah,
the people are watching it, they can't get anything, so they're just like, it's just doom porn. It's like this sort of confirming this kind of biological fatalism that they're already convinced of, basically. And but there's an entertainment factor to it. I keep just hammering on this point. It's just probably not the most psychologically healthy thing to watch
yeah.
if you're trying to break out of it. You should probably unsubscribe if you want to do something else with your life. The face in LMS and the Incel TV. I was not as familiar with that. It's more of like this kind of podcast like we're doing here. It's a 3 hour stream podcast stuff
Right.
where they're talking about more articles and incel related topics. And the entertainment value is the same thing. It's like, oh, women, right? All of these women that think they're special and like they have it so easy, and we have it really hard as
Yeah,
men.
yeah.
Talk about these topics, and my sister is like has so many boyfriends, and I'm just a loser. I
I don't
don't
know.
know
It just
which
sounds
ones of these
sad and circle jerky. I don't. Why would?
are you watching any of these?
No, I've never heard of any of these
Interesting. Oh.
at all. Um, I might have like bumped into some of these like back in the day, but no, I never took the incel route. And I mean, maybe it's because, well, I've never. I'm not gonna, talk about my body count in that sense, but I've never had any problem, quote unquote, getting into relationships.
I think we get the picture. I think,
Yeah.
but of course, there's no reason to either. I mean, if you're,
Well, yeah, but it's like then I've never encountered the incel forum, right? So why would I? And it just, maybe I'll never understand because I've lost my virginity, right? But
well,
that's
I mean,
also
for me,
why
it
this
was
doesn't interest me.
interesting because at a point I was really interested in this kind of like determinism and like this sort of like bio determinism stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I was just I had a phase of my life where I was just kind of obsessed with it, really. And I mean, I wasn't very like socially competent, but I've never sort of been in the predicament of these a lot of these guys where they're like 5'2" and you look
Yeah.
like a potato or something. Like I look like a kind of normal person. So I've never been in that point where it's like, oh damn, I can never make it because I'm like this or that.
No,
But
like it's not that I haven't felt like the the urge, so to speak, like, oh, I need to go out and find woman grug mind and having all of these same drives and being frustrated that I'm not being I'm not like I'm trying to woo a woman and she's not reciprocating, of course.
But there
But
is another, I mean, with the stuff that I was a little bit obsessed with this kind of like
yeah,
bio fatalism stuff and like fatalist determinist philosophy, and it is like this
well,
kind of
fair
like
enough, yeah.
atheist, like I'm very smart atheist stuff.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
another route into this as well. That's like through the pickup artistry. People who will just start out
Yeah,
with,
I
I can't
suppose I was
really,
closer to that because at some point I guess I read the game
yeah.
book. Thank God it, thank God my reaction to it was, well, he sounded quite sad, um, and took it as a warning instead of a guide. um, but and so I suppose for a brief moment I was into PUA stuff, but that was, I suppose, more like a technical, like, ooh, can you hack dating, right?
Yeah, it's an
Approach.
attractive concept. I mean,
Yeah.
especially for men who are like competitive or if you're trying to get something out
But
of
then
stuff,
I
like you're
grew
trying to
up,
hack,
so,
yeah,
you
if
know,
you're trying to hack the financial markets or
yeah.
the dating or whatever gaming stuff, that you're trying to be better than other people and finding these
Yeah, yeah.
magical backdoors to get what you want
Yeah,
uh,
alternative strategies.
instead of standing in line like the losers, quote unquote. So, but I mean, you have the people who try that stuff and just fail. They aren't
Yeah.
able to succeed, and they look for reasons why it didn't work. And there's
The
like then you
problem
have the
is,
entire Wikipedia explaining why you weren't
yeah,
successful. And, like,
I would
they end up
think if you tried PUA stuff and failed, that would almost like compound, your image would just take another hit, wouldn't it?
yeah, because you're trying to basically do this kind of like the one safe way to hack women's brains or
Yeah,
something, and
and you couldn't
if
even
you
do
do
that,
you get the cheat code and it
Yeah.
doesn't work,
Yeah.
you still get rejected even though you have like this crazy neural linguistic programming hypnosis technique to make Stacy fall in love with you or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you still get rejected by everyone, and then it's like, okay, why did this happen? Well, they're
Yeah.
not telling you the truth. These hucksters are selling you snake oil because they're not telling you about the scientific black pill or whatever. That's the
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
the sensitive white guy route into this.
Well, I think my only sort of introduction to this sort of scientific look into, or sort of like a physical focused look into it, must have been through like Stefan Molyneux, weirdly enough, because he's had that angle on things.
Oh yeah, he's almost
Um,
just kind of obsessed with that stuff as
yeah,
well. I mean, I was that. I was a
in a
lot
strange
younger,
way. Yeah.
but I hate to say it because a lot of people will attack Stefan Molyneux. He's like vaguely kind of adjacent to the same stuff that I'm interested in. I mean, I used to be a libertarian, but he has this sort of like these weird obsessions about these biological things.
Yeah, he does.
The eggs, the egg carton stuff, and the
Yeah,
like the balding stuff or something that he keeps just like he keeps bringing it up. Like
yeah,
he's like he bald prematurely, and he'll talk to these guests, and if he talks to some guest and the guest tells him that he has a high body count or something, and let me
yeah,
guess, you have a full head of hair. I assume it's like
yeah,
every
yeah,
fucking time, like every time
yeah.
he'll
It's the
just
same joke
you
every
know
time. Yeah,
same joke that well,
it's
you had it
been
easy
quite a
because you
while
had like
since I.
a full mane of like beautiful flowing hair, and I
Yeah,
just I went bald in my early 20s or whatever. It's like this. He always brings that up, like that's the thing that's gonna like stopping him from being this kind of super, like the reason that he is not this kind of like Don Juan,
yeah.
magic wand
I
guy
think
is because he's bald.
what's confusing me about all this is my sort of intellectual journey has been in realizing the societal impacts of all this, and realizing all of the other factors besides the physical that goes into relationships, etc., and failing to take that into account. I mean, where does that leave you? As I said, you're just like a bunch of sad dudes jerking off online, basically, because women are whores. And that might be true in 2022 for a lot of them, but deciding that, you're just going to lay down and die, basically, and become a herbivore. I mean, what kind of choice is that?
Well, it is like almost a kind of success barrier, I think, for some of them, like, where they almost feel safer just kind of being where they are in life. I think they'd almost be uncomfortable moving out of it at some point.
Yeah,
That's just
maybe.
kind of a psychology bit, but I also agree with you with the fact that you have all these people who they get stuck in these things, and it might make sense for them at an individual level to, okay, I'm just going to opt out of this stuff. I'm just going to opt out of society. I'm just going to opt out because it's I can't win, so I'm not going to play the game. But where does that lead you? I mean,
Yeah, but you're not. But you're not
you
even like.
know,
I mean, it was one thing if you're like dedicating your life to, a study or a craft or something, right? Like something of higher value than yourself.
they're not
But it's
doing
this
that.
like weird inverted narcissism of I am never going to be good enough, so I'm just going to focus on myself 24/7, basically.
I mean, that's the other side of like narcissism. That you have like the extroverted, domineering
Yeah,
narcissism, and then you have like the vulnerable, kind of feminine narcissism,
right. And
where
that's
they,
why we talked earlier a bit about
yeah,
like how this is like a feminine rejection of that problem. But I feel, right?
it's a bit like these people are like wounded soldiers or something. They think that they've been kind of hurt really
Yeah.
badly by society, and they need to have their pain acknowledged,
Hmm.
by other people. And if other people won't acknowledge that they've had such trauma and been through this pain, then they're kind of resentful toward
Yeah.
them. And they don't want to engage with people if they can't get their trauma acknowledged by other people.
But
There's some of
but
that stuff going on.
the weird thing is that, we talked about the terror stuff, and obviously, we don't condone any violence in that sense, but that is also kind of a weird way of lashing out at it. Like if you have all of this sort of this movement, right? Why not channel it into something that will change society towards what you actually want then, right? Again, why just lay down and die along with the other guys instead of and I guess we get into the incel army stuff, which
Yeah, and I
I
assume
was
it's pretty difficult to organize these people.
yeah, that's
Everybody
because
is just like
how do you organize these feminized unresponsive males,
I mean,
basically?
if everybody's like a vulnerable narcissist, I don't know how you're supposed to organize them, because everybody
Yeah,
thinks they should be the leader, but
it was
they really
talked
want
about
someone
in
else
the
to do it for them. So they
right.
want like some kind of big mommy character, I think, to.
Well, I mean that's what they're
benefit
doing,
them.
right? Because they're sort of like, I'm gonna use some weird language here, I guess, but they're sucking at the teat of the societal techno mother figure, the Shodan of modernity, if you want, that we have built, right? The modern welfare state, the social medias, the easy technological existence of modernity, and they're just, you know, being unproductive, lying there and crying about their existence, really. And
Yeah, I mean, 'cause that's when
someone said that, you know, if some Islamo-style subjugation happened, or say some like Bronze Age pervert-style pillaging happened, that they would rise up and heed the call of like a warlord or something. But
yes,
I don't
that's how it
think
works.
like you need to, like, if if a Bronze Age man comes and tries to recruit you, you at least need to have the Bronze Age mindset yourself, right?
Yeah,
And like,
yeah,
who would, like,
sure.
what Leonidas would want an army of fucking, what was his name, Ephialtes? He's the hunchback guy,
Yeah,
right?
they're even
What
worse than that.
Leonidas would want an army of those guys?
No, he doesn't. I mean, it's just. I mean, this is. I think it's a common trope among quote unquote losers in society. They think that if
One
society
day we're
breaks
gonna get
down,
our
that
revenge.
there's going to be
Yeah,
a new role for them in this kind of new, so they can get a re-roll of the dice. But all of these like shitty skills and low confidence is just going to carry over into the next society. You know, I
yeah,
mean, there's going to be a circulation of elites. It's not going
of
to be them.
course.
You're not going to like take the.
And
You know, you're going to have.
maybe a lot of them are lucky. Like, say we you know, we win and we reinstitute the marriage as a strong sacred thing in society, and they would be able to at least have a wife, right? But I mean, they're still gonna be the same person,
Yeah, I think
right?
they would have a lot of the same issues
Yeah,
coming at it from that angle. It's like even if you had arranged marriages, you wouldn't arrange them to be married to
yeah, no,
anybody
that's what I'm
because they're
saying. Like, think about it.
so,
Like,
yeah,
what good parents would want a guy like that to marry their daughter
yeah,
if the
that,
marriage is
exactly.
arranged?
And like the other thing, I came when you were explaining this, like I was thinking about, the kind of need of self justification that is like this thing where you get these incels with these slightly higher IQs, where I don't think you have a lot of based grugs in the incel movement
Yeah,
because they don't really need to kind of justify themselves. Like some of these kind of like face tattoo drug people, they
yeah,
can
yeah,
just live a life of like decadence, and they take drugs and they go and do whatever they want, and they know they're kind of not, they know they're like low ranking runts in society, but they don't have to
yeah. But they
justify it.
embrace it, right? So
They don't have to create a story that kind of justifies the fact that they are
yeah,
like that. But with some of these like idiosyncratic white guys, the sensitive white men, they need to create the kind of grand narrative that kind of explains why they're situated, in a place where they can't find a mate. And that's where I think a lot of this elaborate theorizing comes from. It's not that they're not like completely wrong. That's the problem, is that they're like, 70-80% correct in a lot
a
of
lot
the
of the
stuff they're pointing out.
analysis is
But
correct. I'll give them that.
but,
But
but there is something to be said for the amount of time they have to spend kind of justifying the fact that they're just like not doing anything, if you're just sitting in
yeah,
like an apartment and like
yeah,
looking at porn and gaming all day and doing
and
nothing else
writing
for like 10
Wikipedia
years.
articles on why you can't get a girlfriend.
There's something to be said there about there's a need to kind of justify yourself, and it's not a bad thing to have a kind of narrative to justify the life that you live. But if the life that you live is really sad, then the
Yeah, but
narrative
I
is going
mean,
to be
that could
sad. So
be, you know, that could be Christianity, and you could probably be a lot better off, right?
yeah, I just don't think it's hard to sell that into these people as well. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
maybe.
they just don't have the the psychology for it. I think if you have like a person who has like a good psychological profile for Protestantism would probably not be an incel. They would just be like a voluntary celibate or something,
Yeah, maybe.
or
Yeah,
just kind of embrace that I'm just going to wait and God decides whenever I find a woman or something. I'm just going to be grateful to God. So like you have the kind of INTJ cynical personality that feels entitled to have stuff and kind of
yeah.
not willing to sacrifice anything, and being a little bit lazy, sorry to say, about their approach, but still feeling very entitled to having stuff. And
I might have to take that Myers Briggs test to see where I
I mean, can you look up, celebrity types?
Yeah,
As
I
kind of
did.
like a fun aside. Maybe you could share the screen. We could look at some of the INTJ
Yeah, let me
personalities.
see if I can find it. I had it open here, but
Yeah,
oops,
just
that's
to
the wrong
talk on a few
tab.
things. I mean, the one of the questions then is, of course, the incels role in the dissident, right? And I mean, it is a really difficult question because, like you said, I mean, if you're trying to have like a more powerful network of people, like I mean, if you have a network of tens, you need to have tens. It's like you can't. If you're going to do this elite theory thing, you need actual wannabe elites. You don't need
Yeah,
people
that's
who have
the,
the
I was gonna
intent
say I don't think
conceded.
the incels have a role in the dissident right because the dissident right wants to do something different than the incels. The
Yes.
dissident right wants to change the makeup of society, and the incels do not have an interest in that because they're trying to, as you said, negotiate with the current regime to get Gibbs.
Yeah, I agree, and I think some of them could be rehabilitated to be like really productive. But
Yeah, but that's gonna
let's
happen
see,
after, you know.
famous personality types. Is that
Uh,
the? I think I'm not sure if this is the correct website, but
oh,
like the celebrities types. Uh,
I have personalitydatabase.com. I have is it just 42 famous people and celebrities with oh,
yeah, I
that's,
think so. Yeah, just try to like celebrities, Myers Briggs celebrities or something. You can Google that and see what you find.
let's see, Myers-Briggs.
Sorry, I would try to find it for you, but my setup is a little bit awkward.
Yeah, that's fine. I only find like an article with the INFJ personality.
Hmm.
Let me see if I can find. Is this one?
Ridiculous. No,
Celebrities with
they're
the
not.
same Myers-Briggs person.
Let's see. I'm sorry, they changed their name to IDR Labs. I'm sorry. I'll get you the link
Ah, okay.
here. Let's see, posting it to you.
Ah, here we go. Okay.
So I mean, they used to be called celebrity types. I mean, I've known about this webpage for a long time.
Yep.
I wasn't aware that they changed their branding.
Ah, okay.
But see, here we have like the intuitive. It's kind of like the introverted, intuition-based thinking,
Yep.
judging personality. I
Yep.
mean, for those of you who are like totally unfamiliar, there's a lot of stuff to explain. This is like based on Carl Jung's typologies that was sort of
Mm-hmm.
adapted for like military and like work, human resources use. And it seems to be kind of extremely misunderstood, where people think that they can just kind of flip these letters back and forth and find a personality. But there's a lot more that's going on here in terms
Yeah.
of like people, intuition and thinking versus feeling. And like the thing to understand is that every personality has feeling and thinking and intuition and that kind of stuff. They're just kind of ordered kind of differently in orders of magnitude of how powerful they are and how people prioritize to think. So with these kind of personalities, like typically when there's like a judging personality, is like people who are a lot more rigid in their thinking, like very kind of like punctual planning
Yeah.
people. Here that you have like the introversion, like the introverted intuition that they use, that you basically, it's like this very kind of inward intuitive thinking that is like justified by extroverted thought. I mean, I could do a whole stream on this thing. I need to freshen up a little bit, but if you
If we
scroll
do
down,
that, I have to do a test first to see which one I am.
but yeah, typically a lot of us end up in this personality. So you see with the personalities, like I mean, Isaac Newton was an incel, right? I mean, Friedrich Nietzsche was an incel. So already
Yeah.
here, like we keep just
Two incels. Yeah.
two incels already. I mean, Ayn Rand, or let's see,
Yeah. She wasn't an incel, but yeah.
maybe she should have been, you know. Uh, if you keep scrolling down here, I think you have Bobby
Oh yeah.
Fischer. I mentioned him previously. He's an incel. I think Nikola Tesla is like voluntarily celibate.
Mm-hmm.
let's see, you have the Zuckerberg, like you have like a lot of these kind of autist guy
Yeah.
people. I mean, Stephen Hawking, weirdly enough, I'm kind of
Well,
surprised that he's like this type because he managed to get laid even though he was in like a
yeah.
wheelchair, surprisingly so. John Nash as well. I don't think he was an
Paul
incel, but he was
Krugman.
an incel candidate.
Christopher Hitchens, really? Well, yeah, I suppose I can see that.
I mean, like with these kind of quotes, you could justify any personality
I
being
always saw
anywhere.
him as a more
Extroverted
free
guy.
or artistic of the.
I think I too would imagine that he's a bit more of kind of an extroverted,
Yeah,
domineering, personality. He seemed to, get off more on just kind of attacking people. Like in retrospect, he's a very entertaining guy, but he's not super logically consistent.
no,
He's
that's
more on
why.
just
So,
like,
like, if you contrast him with his brother, I would say this guy is of those two, he's the more extroverted, artistic, free form guy compared to
yeah,
Peter Hitchens.
explosive, extroverted, more
Yeah.
kind of domineering.
Yes, maybe that's, I don't know.
Personality.
Is he older than Peter Hitchens? Maybe
Yeah, I
that's
think
it.
so.
He's just the older brother of the
He's the older
dynamic.
brother, but
Yeah,
he's a lot more kind of volatile in his thinking. I think Peter Hitchens is
yeah.
way more consistent in
Yeah,
his
and
positions. And
I
you
mean
know,
that might be part of, you know these better than I do, but if it's about the intuition and the judgmental and there's some sort of risk taking in here,
yeah,
there's some sort of going against the grain, and so
I
you
think
need some sort of like
you're going to see some familiar characters in this personality type.
yeah,
See, Hegel is in
Hegel,
here.
Luther,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no,
Uh,
I see. Yeah, here we
oh,
go.
then we get like the black ones. So they're bad
The
people there.
black ones.
We have we have the power team here. We got the
Yeah,
Breivik, with Uncle
the
Ted, and
Breivik,
we got
Uncle
Varg.
Ted, Varg.
So we have the Anprim, like the eco-fascists here. It's really funny because all of these sections have like the black ones that are considered like these bad people, but it's quite arguable depending on like
Yeah,
how you view the world.
yeah, of
So
course. Scott Adams. Do you have any other, or do you just want to look at the
no,
in
I
Jace?
mean we could look at these other ones, but in terms of like inceldom, this is
This is the one.
probably like the incel personality that I would if I was just going to pin one in, that's like the most likely to be
Yeah,
in
yeah,
this the psychological profile of how they are. I mean, of course, we could do another stream if that's interesting. We could just look at these kind of personality types and how they
yeah. That
fit
would be fun.
in with politics. See, well, yeah, I think we've covered kind of all the basis on this.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's too bad that we don't have any live audience. It would be fun to do questions.
Yes, it's a fun little stream, but maybe we'll be able to catch up with some of it later, maybe next week or something. But I think we land both quite firmly on the dissident right perspective. On the incel question should be that these are herbivore males that probably won't pose any threat to us and will fall in line once they're commanded to.
Yes, I mean, just summarizing my position, I have sympathy. I acknowledge that this is
Oh
like a
yes.
real thing that's happening because of the way
Mm-hmm.
society is and all these factors. This is happening because of like all these like modernist things, all these modernist forces that are pushing on it, and like the elites are not addressing it, and they're not
Yeah.
even willing to even acknowledge that this exists. And I've
Yeah.
been aware of that for a very long time, and so I have like these people have my sympathies completely, but at
Yes.
the same time, like from our perspective in this kind of dissident right sphere, these people are almost completely useless with the kind of if they're going to go with the surrender strategy and just trying to fit themselves into this progressive box,
Mm-hmm.
just trying to get more welfare or just this kind of like pity money because
Yeah.
they're like biologically determined to be losers or whatever, then it's just not very interesting from the perspective of trying to get some new elites in or get some political action happening that can
Yeah.
actually turn some of these destructive trends around. Because these people have just kind of surrendered. There's just too much softness there. It's not.
Mm.
it's not like BAP, this kind of pirate stuff. It's not raw enough. It's not aggressive enough. This movement. It's just
Yep.
it's just a little too sad, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think we've reached the end point here. It's almost 3 hours, and I feel I'm getting quite tired. So
I think we did well.
I think we did well as well.
So that's good content. I don't know if you're going to shill the Patreon or.
Oh yeah, I should. I've been bad at doing that before, but we do have a subscribe star for this channel, and I like to mention that any proceeds for that is intended to go back into paying for the Longhouse in some form or another. The first milestone is basically to keep the StreamYard's subscription for higher quality videos going, and anything beyond that would be to improve the show in certain ways, like getting more consistent, or maybe someone to make thumbnails for us, or upgrading audio equipment, etc. Other than that, I would like to remind everyone to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't. These things help a lot with discovery. I usually link my Twitter, the the Matrix channel, where we hang out and talk about relevant political stuff, or just post memes, often with a Nordic perspective there too. So if you want to see what the Danes and the Swedes are memeing about, you can head over there and have a look. And lastly, I know you, Luddic, are doing great at the shit posting on your channel.
Yeah, I was just upgraded to community posts, so I'm going to be a little bit more active on there as well.
I see. It seems that posting like memes and images and polls does very well. I hesitate to engage with it myself because I don't want to. I want to keep the the quality of the people who make it to the channel high, but it seems like posting images, posting polls, getting engagement on community posts really help with discoverability for channels.
Yeah, I just tested it and I got I put out a post 10 hours ago and I have 1,000 likes on this.
Jesus.
And this meme that I put out, and a lot of it is from people. The comments and the likes are from people who are not even subscribed. So it's a lot of people who found this like it was just recommended to them.
Yeah.
In the chat. So it's just it's just doing this kind of shit posting thing. It seems like I'm actually just getting a lot of free kind of engagement. Hopefully, I'll just use that channel to grow people over here. I'm going to try to do that tomorrow, actually. I'm just going to recommend that, post some incel meme, and I'm just going to say, we'll go over here and check out the stream. I'll see if it works.
All right. I think on that note, it's time to end the stream. Thank you all for watching, and have a nice weekend. And we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.